join with us in a salute to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In case of fire, there are two ways to exit the chambers. To my left, you'd walk through the council chamber doors, turn left, walk down a flight of stairs, and out of the building. Or perhaps the best and easiest way is at the rear of the chambers, the double doors. In either case, once you're outside of the building, please walk a safe distance away from the building. Secretary, please take the roll. Here.
Charles Duran, Elizabeth Ballard.
Here.
Alan Drine.
Here.
Nicholas Lefakis. Charles Ladd.
Here.
Mary Scott.
Here.
Rich Suzak is here. Linda DeGray.
Here.
Virginia Higley, absent.
Okay. Approval of minutes, there are none. At this point in the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, we welcome comments and concerns and opinions relating to planning and zoning in Enfield from anyone who is present, provided that no one may discuss any matter of business at this time that is already elsewhere on the agenda, any matter that's part of an open public hearing of the commission, or any matter where a decision of the commission may be pending. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission under those conditions? Anyone want to address the commission under those conditions? Last call to address the commission. Hearing none, we'll move on. Public hearing. Bond releases, there are none. Old business public hearing, 2854 10 Trevor Drive, application for an in-law apartment on the first floor. Mary and Mark LaBianca, owner and applicant, combined with public hearing 2854.01 10 Trevor Drive, application for operating a daycare on the second floor. Mary and Mark LaBianca, owner, applicant. Secretary, please take the roll.
Charles Duran.
Here.
Elizabeth Ballard.
Here.
Alan Drinen.
Here.
Nicholas Lefakis. Here. Charles Ladd.
Here.
Mary Scott.
Here.
Rich Suzak is here. Linda DeGray.
Here.
Virginia Higley, absent.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant requested that this be continued until the 18th. She has not been able to get the information that you requested at the last meeting at this time.
To May 18th, do you have we have time for that? And
Yes,
has she,
because you've opened it, and so then you have time.
right, I know the time's moving, okay. But we don't need a letter either?
No.
Okay. Since it's been opened, is there anyone in the public would like to speak in favor or against the applications? Anyone in the public would like to speak in favor or against the application? Last call to speak in favor of public hearing 2854 or 2854.01. Hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to continue to May 18th.
I'll make a motion to continue this application until our next meeting, May 18th.
Second.
All in favor? It's unanimous, 8-0-0.
Few more like that.
Public hearing 2857, 41 Hazard Avenue, it's Olive Garden, a special permit and site plan application for interior remodeling of a dining, lobby, and bar area, and a new tower featured at the building entrance, facade change and exterior remodeling. This was previously opened, and will the secretary please take the roll?
Charles Duran.
Here.
Elizabeth Ballard.
Here.
Alan Drinen.
Here.
Nicholas Lefakis. Here. Charles Ladd.
Here.
Mary Scott.
Here.
Rich Suzak is here. Linda DeGray.
Here.
Virginia Higley, absent.
Is the applicant here?
No, this is the same situation, Mr. Chairman. The applicant indicated that they were not able to get all the materials that you asked, supporting materials at the last meeting, and they asked it to be continued to the 18th. And it's the same situation. You have time.
Go ahead, do it.
Again, the chair will entertain a motion to, well, I've got to go. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor or against this application? Anyone would like to speak in favor or against the application? Last call to speak in favor or against public hearing 2857. Hearing none, chair will entertain a motion to continue to May 18th.
I'll make a motion to continue public hearing 2857 until our next meeting on May 18th, 2017.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor? None opposed and no abstentions. New business, public hearing, 2855. Secretary, please read the legal ad and take.
Mr. Chairman, I thought there was some interest in moving up the Plaza Restecker, 2861.
The chair will entertain a motion to take item C out of order and take this up to this point.
I make a motion that we take item C under new business, which is public hearing 2861, move it to A.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor? It's unanimous. None against and none opposed. None against and no abstentions. Okay, 2861 is 39 Hazard Avenue, special permit application. Secretary, please read the legal notice and take the roll.
Okay. The Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, May 4th, 2017, beginning at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Council Chambers, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, concerning the following application. Public hearing 2861, 39 Hazard Avenue, special permit application Plaza Aztec, modification to approved conditions for outdoor Cinco de Mayo event, request to allow event until 1 a.m. rather than sunset. Ricardo Garcia applicant, map 56, lot 2, Business Regional Zone, BR. And Charles Durin.
Here.
Elizabeth Ballard.
Here.
Alan Drynan.
Here.
Nicholas Lefakis. Here. Charles Ladd.
Here.
Mary Scott.
Here.
Rich Suzak is here. Linda DeGray.
Here.
Virginia Higley, absent.
Okay, is the applicant here? Whoops.
Yeah.
Do you want to present it, or can you?
Well, we did advise the applicant that today was the 4th, and the event was the 5th, and with the legal advertisement, this would be the earliest you could get it. He wanted to present it. Basically, he's asking for permission to, rather than close down the event at sunset, to continue until 1 a.m. When you originally approved it several years ago as a special event, you set a requirement that it could not extend beyond sunset. So it seems like it's pretty clear as what's being asked for. So you have the choice of keeping it at sunset, extending it to 1 a.m., or picking a time in between.
Yeah, we do. The only thing, we can postpone that until
We can't postpone it because the event's
Well,
tomorrow.
no, I mean,
He comes later.
if he comes later, right, well, I don't know. All right, we can take care of it. Go ahead. Basically, he's submitted the drawings. Okay, then any discussion? It's till 1 a.m.
Any report from the police department?
We did get a report from the fire marshal that as long as the same setup was in effect, that would be the fire marshal's concern. Don't recall whether we got a police department report, but police is basically traffic.
I remember another one recently where it was a request to open later, and we needed a police report on it.
Well, it wasn't. It was set
Mud
up.
wrestling.
But as I say, either, sunset is what, probably 8 o'clock,
Yeah,
7:30,
yeah.
8 o'clock right now. So you leave it at 8 o'clock, extend it till 10 o'clock, extend it till 11, extend it till 1 a.m. It's whatever your pleasure is. I
What time's closing?
can't really
I don't know.
substitute for the
Bar
applicant. I'm
hours.
not sure why they're not here.
You go to 11, extend it.
I guess my question is, it's outdoors. They want to do it outdoors
Yeah,
until
it's
1
an
in the
outdoor
morning.
event. It's an
So
outdoor
it's-
event, and that's
Yeah, and that's a lot.
Well, the drawing is, yes, it's a drawing.
for it
What
to
we've
continue in.
generally done is, if it's in consultation with the health department, but they should already know, and I don't know if they set up, the health department, fire department, and the police, if they have no problems with it, then all we're doing was checking it. There aren't any other changes as far as are
Well,
there?
I think the time frame usually the commission has put on if they are adjacent to residential areas. This appears to be in a commercial plaza, but you don't know how sound travels. So it's really a policy decision of the commission.
Go to 11.
There are comments that you received in your, the extra folder that you,
Okay,
particularly from the North Central District Health.
if you put up with us tonight on some of this, we don't have the secretarial help in the office, we should have, and we just received these, so we'll do the best we can. Jen,
Would you like her to read them, Paru?
yes, please. I guess, because I don't,
Your mic on, Jen?
Yep.
Thank you.
So from Deb Corona, she says the North Central District Health Department has no concerns with the extended hours of operation. The applicant has submitted an application for a temporary event to cover the beverage service and ice drinks from outside the building. All food will be prepared and served from the kitchen inside the building. Staff will be on site to serve the patrons. And that's really all she said. And then Paul Sensky, the fire marshal, just said that he had no issues with the extended hours, provided that the approved layout remains the same.
so I found the one of the fire marshal and the health department, and we also have the
John Cabillo.
engineering,
Yep.
so, and
We have them all.
and the police, you said, had no, just
We-
traffic.
No comment.
No comment.
Uh,
Because, Mr. Chair, because I could see where somebody, if they had an event and, 8 o'clock is kind of early, especially on a Friday.
I
This
agree.
just happens to fall on a Friday, so that, for them to close down at 8 o'clock on a Friday evening, when people are just starting to come out, would definitely be a hamper to their, business environment, so that, I can conceive that they would want to remain open. And, the only thing that would concern me is the noise, and as long as they're within, the noise ordinance, that they don't have any, large, loud bands or anything, music that's really blaring would disturb anybody else. I don't see a problem of extending it. And whether it's extended to 12 or 1, I think that, that could be at our discretion. But, I think that 8 o'clock, it's almost like you're
I agree with you.
you're putting your kids to bed, and all of a sudden, everybody has to go home. So, I could see that, he would want to have an extended time.
They're serving alcoholic beverages. Will they be consumed outside then?
Yeah.
The building, okay.
Yes.
But
Okay.
the-
Served inside.
No, the waitresses, I guess, are carrying them out. We had regulations pertaining to that. Is this a one-year deal because, as Rich mentioned, it's on a Friday night? It's not always going to be on a Friday. So do we give it just for this year?
I think the intent was to be able to run the event later on a regular basis.
Oh, so
So,
then, yeah.
I mean, there are all kinds of ways you could handle it. You could say no music leaving the site after 11. Maybe loud music shuts down at 11, but you can continue the rest
I'd
of
like
it
to
till
do
1.
something like that, yeah.
If Cinco de Mayo came on a Monday or a Tuesday, another day, would we want to just limit this one to Friday since it's a weekend,
Well, that's what
or
I
allow it
asked.
forever?
Totally up to the commission.
I think if we allow music until 11, and it's in an area that's basically minimal residential, and they could have it annually outside, people are going to sit outside, if it's nice, like tomorrow's supposed to
You'll sit
rain.
out to
but-
finish your drinks.
But they
and
can
so
sit
forth.
outside, but the music stops at 11. Even if it's a Monday night, it's not really going to disturb people.
This probably won't be a good test for them anyways, because it's supposed to rain pretty heavily all day tomorrow.
Yeah, but I'm just saying is.
Probably wouldn't be a very
if
good test for them
They
anyway.
can have people outside,
Yeah,
but cut the music off at 11 from now on, and that way they can still have their party going, but we're also being considerate of the neighbors.
Okay, so music at 11, how about the entire activity till 12?
And bar service, yeah.
I don't know how time they stop serving at bars.
Well,
I don't know.
1 a.m. is
Oh,
the
bars
time.
are?
I believe it's 1 a.m.
Okay,
Don't quote me on that.
all right, we'll go with you.
Not the
You're the expert.
drink.
Well, I think you have,
If you're just sitting outside and you're not having music, it's
okay.
not going to be that
All
loud.
right. So activity then till 1 o'clock?
Yeah.
Anything else you'd suggest, Roger, or?
No, I think that's a good, good motion. You allow them to go to 1,
Jan,
but
you're
shut down the
in that
music, shut
age
down the
group that might
outside
be
music at
down there.
11.
Is that, you're in that age group that might be over there. Would you?
Are you gonna put Jen on the spot?
Yes. No, I mean, is that a reasonable hour, do you think, as far? Okay. All right, so that's what we have. All right, I'll open to the public. Anyone in the public would like to speak in favor or against this application and could help us out?
Dana wants to speak.
Anyone else in the public would speak in favor or against the application? Last call to speak in favor or against the application. So we grant this with those two conditions. Music till 11 and the activity till 1. Gerald, well, then let me, I don't have my gavel. I'll close public hearing 2861. Close the right one, right. I've closed the hearing. Nobody wants to make a motion,
I gotta find it.
please?
I'm looking for it here.
We're looking.
I don't know.
Mr. Chair?
I don't think you guys received a resolution for this one, just because it was an event.
Sorry,
Not finding it.
we don't need one.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a resolution that we accept the special permit application modification to public hearing 2861 for the conditions of an outdoor Cinco de Mayo event, that we allow the event to be outside until 1 a.m., but that all music and other, significant noise be restricted beyond 11 p.m.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? And any abstentions? 7-0-0. Thank you for your help.
Bless you, Alan.
Usually, okay, now back to the regular order, public hearing 2855. Second, this is public hearing 2855, a petition for zoning text amendment. Secretary, please read the legal ad and take the roll.
The Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, May 4th, 2017, beginning at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Council Chambers, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, concerning the following application. Public hearing 2855, petition for zoning text amendment to the Enfield zoning regulations. Add new section 5.10.2 to allow reduction in lot size in a business local district from 30,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet. Reduction in minimum frontage from 150 foot to 100 feet. Reduction in front yard from 60 feet to 40 feet by special permit, subject to requirements of section 9.20. Add note 14 in commercial use table 5.10.1 to allow the reduction in a minimum lot size to 20,000 square feet and minimum lot frontage to 100 feet by special permit pursuant to proposed section 5.10.2. The applicant is Robert Bolduc, doing business as Pride Limited Partnership, Springfield, Massachusetts. Application on file with the Office of the Town Clerk.
Actually, you put it right in here for you.
Is the applicant here?
I know.
Again, if
Call
you
the
come
roll,
forward.
Oh, let me call the roll. I'm sorry. Charles Durin.
Here.
Elizabeth Ballard. Alan Driner.
Here.
Nicholas Lefakis.
Here.
Charles Ladd.
Here.
Mary Scott.
Here.
Rich Suzak is here. Linda DeGray.
Here.
Virginia Higley.
Okay,
It's so long. I forgot what I was doing.
keep you busy, Rich.
Your maps are actually much better than ours, so we'll start.
They'd better be.
Looks good.
If you will, please identify yourselves.
James Channing, counsel for Pride Limited Partnership. With me is Robert Bolduc, the applicant. We are the owners of, or Pride Limited Partnership are the owners of some parcels located within the business local district. Hopefully this is recording. I'm not sure if this is amplifying there.
That one works.
So the request before the commission is for a zone text change amendment for three, specifically the square footage, the frontage area, and the setbacks for a parcel located within a business local district. We'll briefly discuss, first of all, what the business local zone is pursuant to both the Plan of Conservation Development as well as it's applicable in this case or in the town of Enfield. Next, we'll talk about the standard for regulation change or text change as to what exactly the commission needs to consider with respect to our request. And then we'll get into the actual specific proposed regulation change. And then we'll compare that to the Plan of Conservation Development as to why we think it would be appropriate. And then the impact of the change, if anything. And lastly, as to why, again, we're making the request, why we think the request is appropriate and is in fact consistent with both the Plan of Conservation Development and does not hinder the development within the town of Enfield, and also actually benefits or is not a hindrance to either the public safety, welfare, or well-being or economic development here in the town of Enfield. Again, I believe that there was a meeting with the zoning commission last week discussing the zoning regulations in the commission. I'm not privy to that discussion. So if at any point in time I talk about something that either is contrary to your current train of thought or maybe some pending plans with respect to the next Plan of Conservation Development, certainly feel free to correct me and we can expunge upon that or discuss that further. But with respect to the business local district, as you can note on the map, and I can approach, at some point I'll approach the well to point out exactly the sections we're referring to and use my handouts with respect to the focus of the local or the business local district. Really what we're talking about here, although it spreads across both Enfield Street, Hazard Avenue, parts of Raffia Road, and I believe King Street as well, the motivation behind this request is really focused on part of the business local district. Again, obviously it will apply to all areas of the zoning, but for this purpose, we looked and evaluated really the Plan of Conservation Development and the Enfield zoning regulations from a span between 91 North, or the on-ramp and off-ramp of 91, up until the Massachusetts line there on Enfield Avenue. And according to the Plan of Conservation Development, again, the local business district is a small area along Enfield Street and King Street, Hazard Avenue, and to a lesser extent on Raffia Road, that actually comprises back in, according to 2009 zoning classifications, only 271 acres within the town of Enfield. We're talking about 1.2% of the entire town is in fact what the business local district is. And when you look at into the build-out capacity as it stands today, with respect to the business local district, we're referring to 392,554 acres, square feet of undeveloped land, or 9 acres, as well as 78,511 square feet of, again, a maximum development potential. That's according to the regulations as they stand today. With respect to, again, the build-out capacity is 20%. Nothing with respect to this proposed zoning text change regulation impacts that detrimentally, meaning that we're not asking to reduce or change the maximum percentage build-out within the town. All we're looking at is a consideration as to whether or not there could be potentially a way to reduce the minimum square footage of both the frontage, the front setback, as well as the land square footage area. And then when you look at the build-out capacity of existing zoning, meaning vacant land only, according to the 2009 Plan of Conservation Development, again, the local business comprises of 74,214 square feet of undeveloped area, or 2 acres, and then the 14,843 square feet is, again, the maximum development potential. If I may approach briefly, I'll try to speak into this microphone just to point out exactly the business local areas as it is compared to the entire adopted zoning map for the town of Enfield, and then focus on perhaps to point out very briefly, and now I'm not intentionally missing some of the parcels, but there are some floating zones with respect to the business local zone.
Yeah, take your mic.
It's supportable. Where's the,
He's got it.
I'm not sure if this amplifies, but hopefully at least records.
you have to hold it right up.
I'll have to speak a little louder. For those at home, I apologize. But the business local here is a magenta shaded color, which really revolves around which Enfield Avenue here, starting at the state line, continuing on both sides of Enfield, going, and this is what I refer to as the 91 north ramp, but then it does continue on down along Enfield. There's some areas over here, I believe is Hazard Avenue, and the Elm Street corridor I referred to. And then, is this Raffia Road, if I'm not mistaken? So there's more over here in Hazard Avenue. And then there's, again, 3, 4, these are the floating districts I referred to. These are 4 additional zones. So that's the district that we're referring to with respect to business local as it stands today in the town of Enfield. So with that in mind, then we get into exactly the standard of a text change regulation as to why you should consider this. Again, from an applicant standpoint, but also from a zoning commission standpoint. And the generally adopted standard in Connecticut, and certainly Roger will correct me if I'm wrong, assuming the town of Enfield does go by the generally adopted standard, it's a 2-part question. The first question is whether or not, in fact, the proposed change will not hinder the attainment of the purpose of the regulations. Then the second part of that question is, again, is whether or not the health, safety, welfare, or property values will not be adversely affected by this text change. You're looking at that for the standard regulation again. It's the applicant's position that, in fact, what is being requested will not hinder that, and it is, in fact, consistent with the development. We believe it would do so, and we'll get into the specifics of it now. So as it currently stands, and as it would stand for the most part, that the 3 standards with respect to lot area for the business local zone, as it is now, is 30,000 square feet. The frontage feet, as it stands, it would continue to stand, is 150 feet. The front yard feet would be 60 feet. And then the side yard, again, which is not proposed to be changed at all or ever, except for obviously a variance, would be 20 feet. And then the rear yard still retaining 20 feet. Impervious coverage being 66%, maximum building coverage 20%, and height is 24 feet. So then we get back into what would be presented as a note 4 with respect to the amendment of Table 510 of the zoning regulations. and that would potentially allow, a minimum lot size reducing from 30,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet. The frontage feet could potentially allow reduction from 150 feet to 100 feet. And again, with respect to the front yard setback of 60 feet, could potentially allow 40 feet from 60 feet as it stands today. And I think the most important factor or consideration is it's all contingent upon a special permit being issued by the zoning commission with respect to that application. I'd note, as the regulations stand today, this is consistent or similar, very similar to other regulation text change amendments which have previously been endorsed and adopted by the commission. I'd note on page 56 of 127 of the revised regulations, going to what currently stands as 13 notes of the lot and bulk requirements. Again, number 1 allows a lot area to be reduced to an acre and frontage of 200 feet, that being within the BP district, which would be 3 acres, could be reduced all the way down to 1 acre, or 300 feet could be reduced down to 200 feet. But most important is that there's conditions imposed, and that's what we are still requesting today, that conditions still be imposed. Again, talking about an overall plan, with respect to that note, would be an overall plan of both traffic circulation, curb cuts, and access easements. And again, that being something that's consistent with both the plan of conservation development of the town of Enfield as well as the development therein. In looking at the plan of conservation development, I don't think I need to tell the commission, you're far better versed on it than I am, that were some considerations and factors that the town had when I looked back at both economic development as well as the development here in the town, specifically for focus of this text change proposal along the Route 5 corridor, or the Elm Street, what I'll refer to as the Enfield Street corridor. And looking at that, there are actually 2 different BL districts, which were traditionally the business local district, as well as the business local, I believe it's Hazardville district, or the BLH, which is for short. And when you looked at the BLH, the intent for the town, my understanding is to actually make it more pedestrian friendly, more aesthetically pleasing. And actually, if you look at the BLH, which is really consistent, it goes along the lines of BL, the setback there is actually a maximum 25 feet. Where here, we currently have a minimum of 60 feet in the business local district. The maximum in the BLH is actually 25 feet, and the minimum being 10 feet. So really the intent of the plan of conservation development was to potentially bring some developments closer to what would be the main thoroughfare. And the purpose of that would be for multiple reasons. One, obviously, as individuals, makes it more pedestrian friendly, or it makes it more potentially aesthetically pleasing, and it really brings home the local environment. And I think it's telling to say that the name of this zoning district is actually business local. We're talking about local businesses or local areas, not intended to be the large box shops or the large business areas, really a local business that serves the local public. And what's most telling about the business local district is that for the most part, and there may be a couple of zones or a couple of parcels that are aberrations, but for the most part, the business local parcels are all along a main thoroughfare, and then you have residences behind them. And so the main concern of obviously the town of Enfield, specifically the citizens, and should be for the commission, is to how these developments within the business local district impact obviously the citizens and those that live in abutting residences, but also how it could attribute or contribute to the town of Enfield and those residents. And it's our position that in allowing or potentially allowing a reduction in both the square footage, the front setback, and the frontage of it could actually benefit. And again, the special permit criteria would still exist, would actually now exist. If an individual were to apply today under a business local district for something that didn't require a special exception or special permit, you as the commission would be regulated or limited in your review under a site plan process. But now, if an individual were to apply, or now meaning if this were to be adopted, if an individual or an applicant were to apply and ask for a consideration with respect to the reduction of these 3 criteria, you as the zoning commission would then have the special permit review process and the ability to impose additional and or more conditions. And I think from a town development standpoint, why you should want this or why it could be a consideration from the commission is really looking at the development. And if you look specifically at this Elm Street corridor, which I'll refer to from 91 up until the state line, in 2009, that was specifically identified as an area of both unique area in the town of Enfield and an area needing proactive municipal planning. What that means by proactive municipal planning is, in fact, take additional steps to foster development. There are 22 parcels, which are currently between 22 BL parcels. And I apologize, but I believe, I'll look at the map, my calculations were that there were 22 parcels, but it does appear that there's a larger parcel that may at some point have been changed since the 2009 Plan of Conservation Development, so that would reduce it to 21 parcels. But of the 22 parcels that are zoned as business local between the 91 corridor and the Massachusetts state line, only one actually complies with all the regulations, that being the McDonald's parcel. The 21 other parcels do not comply with the BL regulations. So if a business zone were to come in, they'd have to obviously seek a variance as it stands now, and they still could seek a variance if this were to be denied. But as it stands now, if a business or an applicant were to come in, 21 of the 22 parcels are non-conforming, either non-conforming uses or non-conforming lots. And again, so they could seek a variance, or in the alternative, the commission could take it upon themselves to allow a text change amendment, and then, with the caveat, the understanding or the condition that the applicant complies with special permits. The applicant complies with what the commission feels would be appropriate with respect to a reduction in the non-conforming use, a reduction in the non-conforming lot. And again, I'm not getting into specifics as to whether or not there may be still some issues before a zoning board of appeals with those jurisdictional issues. But I'm just getting into, if someone were to come before you and by right have a right, they could really do a lot more than if they were to come before you, ask for some considerations of the commission, and with that, really look at what else could be done to foster development, but really benefit the neighborhood. And the most notable part with respect to that that corridor between 91 and Massachusetts Street was a lack of sidewalks. And really look back at the Plan of Conservation Development in 2009, it was noted that, in fact, one of the considerations was the plan proposes to guide future commercial development in the area. And this is more limited, more focused on the historical commercial corridor of Enfield Street, but I think it would apply or could stretch to what the corridor that I'm referring to. It does refer, again, the area in a manner that respects the character and scale of existing residential buildings in the area. And it does note that major changes include reducing building setbacks, providing better street-side landscaping, and pedestrian amenities. And I think that if you were to consider a development that actually had a reduction in the frontage and had potentially a reduction in the front setback, you would be potentially pulling some buildings closer to the area, but actually moving away from the residential. Now, that's with the caveat that obviously the DOT may be involved with access agreements, or the commission would feel that landscaping and aesthetics are appropriate. But in looking at, again, the Plan of Conservation Development on page 24, referring to commercial developments, it indicates that newer, and this is mixed-use buildings, but newer buildings should be oriented toward the roadways and have relatively small building setbacks. Another feature that's helpful to shoppers is a common building scale and signage. And that's what we're looking for in terms of potential retail or restaurant or small-scale development in a business local zone would be something that speaks to the people of the town of Enfield, that benefits them, but also doesn't take away from, a hectic area. There's no question that Route 5 is heavily traveled, albeit since 2003 it's actually reduced a little bit. The traffic has reduced a little bit. But you think about traffic as it goes there, and a lot of people wanting to go to their residences, but also stop at a local business establishment. And as to how that could be tailored or how it could be impacted would be via special permit. Now, a special permit doesn't exist for every use today, but it could potentially exist for every use that meets these reduced considerations or reduced factors. And again, I think economic vitality is a real concern of the commission. In fact, I don't want to put words in Chair or Commissioner Charles Ladd's mouth, but I believe back in 2009, there was an email talking about economic vitality. And the question or the point came in, and it was I believe it may have been in his personal capacity, so I'm not, again, using this as a representation of the entire commission, but I thought it spoke to volumes as to an individual that obviously is much more familiar with the town of Enfield than I am, is much more familiar with the town of Enfield than most people in terms of economic development. And speaking about economic vitality, the point was made that when a business wants to move into town, we should encourage them to look at vacant buildings. Perhaps by assisting them in upgrading the site for their particular needs, town could potentially use equipment contractors. But again, looking at land use and really wanting to bring businesses in. There's no question that since the Plan of Conservation Development was most recently adopted, that there's obviously been some detrimental economic impact from the business. And so this text change the applicant submits would in fact potentially spur, potentially invite one particular economic development that I can think of, but also potentially other economic development within this limited local business district. And again, I don't want to get too much in-depth into what people wanted back with the Plan of Conservation Development. But for the record, I think it's important to note that obviously the town should support development and entrepreneurs was agreed upon by 83.6% of the questionnaires. And existing retail serves the town. A lot of people believe with that. But then when they get into what can the town of Enfield do to market itself better as a destination for both business and investment, the town residents and the citizens of the town that responded saying making the town more visually appealing was obviously very high up on the list. And that's something that the commission could do under business local, treat it, almost expand this other historical corridor, expand it and making conditions with respect to either aesthetics conditions or landscaping conditions or pedestrian bicycle conditions to make it more friendly to both the residents in the town as well as the commuters. And so then looking at the basis for the request, I think it really is very similar to what was looked at back in 2010 when there was an application for a reduction in lot size in the Thompsonville Village Center District. And when that application came before, again, and the commission has very similar criteria where the condition has the ability to reduce a minimum lot size, that only being the minimum lot size here, there's 3 things being asked to be reduced. But again, the commission has the ability to reduce a minimum lot size, provided obviously subject to both the special permit and other restrictions. Now in the Thompsonville Village District, the commission felt that it was appropriate, the other 2 conditions being any other subsections, obviously that being a residential area could only be owner-occupied single-family and duplex residences, but then also the application shall address how the proposed design and use is consistent with the purpose of the district, and then getting really into design type, style, color, details of window treatment, and other trim and features. And so the applicant before you submits that if the commission were to consider the potential for allowing a reduction in both the square footage, the setback, as well as the frontage, that the commission could do so by applying appropriate restrictions or conditions, the least of which is requiring a special permit, but also additional restrictions that could foster development among the business local district, specifically these 22 parcels that fail to meet those 3 minimum thresholds that I referred to, at least one of the minimum threshold that I referred to. And I think in closing, I just will point, and then obviously we have an open discussion. Hopefully I didn't take too long or misspeak. But in closing, I do think it's important to point out the parcels we're referring to and as to how they really are lacking in terms of those 3 requirements. And if you think about going down from the Massachusetts state line to at least the 91 corridor, most of those buildings are very close to the road. And there are perhaps too close, some of them. And there are ways, certainly not within the 60 feet. I think I just went down, in fact, doing research for this application and request, but in fact just tonight came down and looked at that. And how could the town better that corridor to benefit the town in both a economic tax spurring benefit, but also an aesthetically pleasing way. And it could happen by having this reduction, by pulling them in, but then creating or imposing landscaping restrictions, pedestrian facilities, and the like. And so I will just refer to or try to point up a couple of parcels. Again, I apologize that my printouts aren't as large as what was provided by the town of Enfield for the people at home and the viewing commission. But I will just briefly point out some areas as to exactly what we're talking about and how it could be changed to, again, potentially benefit the town in twofold way. Benefit the commission by allowing you, giving you some teeth with respect to any applicant, and then benefiting the town by potentially allowing or encouraging further development of some of these parcels. Roger, I don't mean to block you, but I think you're out. I'm a natural lefty.
I just want to point out for the record.
Oh, absolutely.
That's not the current zoning map.
Understand. Thank you. The zoning map's up there. This is the map we referred to. Just briefly speaking about the points.
We have to mark those as exhibits, and you have to describe them for the, no, well, you have
So
to
what
identify
I'm
them
referring to now
before
is page A13 of the Plan of Conservation Development, for the record. This being a map that's entitled Summary of Public Input Maps from the meeting held on February 4th, 2009. Again, community character and land use issues. It referred to certain areas that were areas of concern or considered unique areas
You
in
want that to
of the
be
town of
Exhibit A?
Enfield. Like Chalk A or Exhibit A, absolutely, please.
Okay.
And again, referring to this area specifically, there were a number of areas needing design standards, as well as a potential mixed-use area. That refers to the lot up there I was referring to. But then again, over here, we're talking about an area that's considered both a unique area, but also an area needing proactive municipal planning. You know, something should be done to benefit the town through what I propose as this text change would at least be a start in the right direction.
So you want that to be Exhibit B?
So this will be Exhibit B, and it's taken from the GIS, and I'll have a second, Exhibit C, which just bifurcates it. But again, this is from 91 up until the state line. These are the 22 parcels I'm referring to. And again, this is the McDonald's parcel complies with all three, and you can see how the setback is really the 60 feet. But then some of these, this next parcel next to it is really almost close to the road. I think it's a morally casual establishment, but it's close to the road, and then this one's right next to it.
Well, the reason you know for that is McDonald's is new.
Correct.
All right.
And so that's the standard
And
that you established. And so the question,
Original, right.
and so the question is as to what the commission wants to do, and there's a number of for sale signs or another of developments.
Right.
And so as it stands today, if someone were to apply, does the commission want to force people to buy out parcels and then create a number of McDonald's, a number of
There's a
national
plan that we
chains?
refer to, for your information, it's called the Gateway Project. It was a survey, and I believe you probably have it, or you should.
Correct.
And that fully designs that entire area.
And referring to that, then the question obviously comes down to the development as to what the Gateway Project is and how it accomplishes and what's happened since the Gateway Project was initially
Right,
implemented
okay.
in terms of development. And so looking at that, I think McDonald's is obviously the most noteworthy development, and they purchased a significant number of lots and came in from a national standpoint and developed that lot. But then we have, obviously, this store was currently marketed. I don't believe it's either pending or still available.
It's a package store.
It was a former package store. Now it was, I think Berkshire Hathaway was selling it pending. But now if someone wanted to come in and buy it, they would either have to seek a variance because it doesn't comply with the zoning regulations or the current business local, or, and again, if they wanted, what was subject to a site plan, if they came in non-conforming, kept it as it is, the commission would be, kind of had their hands tied as to what you could have in terms of a say.
Well, let me ask, since you raised it, because when you ask for a zone change, you're affecting a lot of property and a lot of people, wherever the zone may be. Why didn't you go to the CBA? and which would only affect you. I mean, you mentioned that these people could, but had you gone to ZBA?
No, we have not applied to the ZBA. We could apply to the ZBA, and
Right, well,
I'll
that's
tell you, it
why I
a
was
conscious
wondering, because then
decision.
you would only affect your lot and not somebody else. I don't know.
I can answer that.
Yeah,
Sir, that is clearly an option. If I can state this in layman's terms, the current zoning, which is business local, really is counter business local, because none of the sites in this stretch can a business local expand on or remodel under the current zoning, because the current zoning favors larger businesses. It basically forces someone to buy 2 lots, and once they've done that, you're likely to get a larger company, a national company, another McDonald's. And so the purpose of this, we felt, was more consistent with business local in that it would allow this small portion, which is really only 1.2% of the town, to maintain the character of the town in terms of small business, because it's a fact that consumers today are tired of the big chains and the big nationals and tired of going to malls, and so this would allow small businesses to develop in this area.
well, this area, but we're talking the other areas that he's mentioned. I imagine you have the list that we were given by the town.
But they're all just as small as this area, and they are, all of them combined, only come up to 1% of the entire town. So it's a small area the area's a small area. And the nice thing about it, we felt this gives you additional controls, because then you could require a special permit. And so you'll not only encourage small business, but you'll have a special permit process over them, which gives you infinitely more controls than you have now. And that's why we thought this was appropriate.
The only thing is, and he's mentioned a couple, each area that he's mentioned is unique. For example, the regulations were written specifically, he mentioned Hazardville Business District. That's generally a historic area, and it was written specifically for that, because he mentioned setbacks and so forth. So each area is unique. T-ville, he mentioned T-ville Village District. That's another unique area that we could, as he mentioned, allow for variances on lot size. Those lots, I believe, some of them were 25 feet back in the old days. And we have lots like that. There's a lot on North T-ville that's off of Enfield Street, that the lots were 25 feet way back
Well,
when in the 1800s. So we had to allow for that in various areas that he's mentioned, and I'd rather stick with this area than try to, for your help, because we want to help you, but I was wondering, because he keeps mentioning it, that you want the zone change, yet all these others could go to ZBA.
Well, in our experience, ZBA is not intended to solve problems like this. It's intended to solve unique problems, and to say to ZBA, okay, we have 19 lots, and because of the zoning that's there now, we'd like you to issue variances for all of them, for basically everything, because the zoning that's on it now is not appropriate, or is not working for all 19 businesses. And I would think if I was a ZBA member, I would say, wait a minute, if you don't, 19, to force 19 people to come before us is kind of defeats the purpose of a variance. Variance is supposed to be for unique and unusual, but not to not to run the town through ZBA, via ZBA. And that's why we felt that this would solve the problems in this stretch, and it's a short stretch. And for 19 businesses to be right along this strip in, what's the total distance in miles?
I have one other,
It's not very long.
There were reasons, and I believe it's in the Express and the Gateway and some of the others, because he did mention some of the others up there. that was a unique area too, and that's why they did have a special study on that years ago on what to do with that, which included down, as he said, to the 91 area. That's it. But since he had raised it, I was just wondering why you hadn't gone in the process to ZBA, because as I understand it, you have a unique problem, or a couple of problems, I don't know, through the, yes.
Mr. Chairman, maybe you could help guide staff in terms of the format that you're going to be following. The format I would be used to is to let the applicant make his presentation, and then we would go
Right,
to the,
no,
go to the public.
because he had raised it, and I was
and then
just,
staff would make a presentation,
was-
and then you'd go back to the applicant to wrap
well,
up
we'd
with questions.
interrupted before when they'd say stuff a lot of times, and he's
Right.
mentioned it a couple of times. I just wanted to clear why, if they had gone to ZBA, because it was there, that's all. Well, I'm sorry, it's
It's a valid point.
Right,
Whether we
thank
make it
you.
now or 10 minutes down the road, I think
Thank you,
it's a
Mr.
great.
Bolduc, for your
Before you go, just so that the commission can evaluate your testimony, you introduced yourself as counsel to Mr. Bolduc. Are you representing yourself as licensed to practice in the state of Connecticut as an attorney?
Now, I'm counsel to Pride Limited Partnership, which is a partnership in the state of Massachusetts. I know we've.
So you're not licensed to
That's
practice in
correct.
the
No, I'm
state
an
of
attorney
Connecticut?
for Pride Limited
Thank you.
Partnership. I know we've discussed that before. I'm not,
Okay,
and if I made that misrepresentation for the record, I'm not
that's, okay. Thank
acting
you.
as an attorney at all.
He's just more eloquent than I am, so. He's just more eloquent than I am.
Well, I'm sure he's well-versed in.
No, but it's important for the commission to know because, you have expert testimony and you rely more heavily on expert testimony than non-expert testimony. So all I'm trying to do is make sure that the record is clear.
Well, Mr. O'Brien's certainly far more educated on land use in Connecticut than I am, and so I wouldn't say anything to upset him, hopefully. And I didn't mean to misspeak, but in speaking of the
But you
the
don't have to
standard-
be, you don't, I'm not saying you have to be an attorney to make a presentation.
Oh, no.
You don't have to be, and you did a great job. I'm just saying
He did a very
that,
good
that you said you were counsel to the president. I just wanted to clarify what that meant.
I think that just means I have authority to speak for him today.
Right.
Thank you. I hope so, but he's here anyway. So again, I think in closing, and certainly I anticipate there may be some dialogue or questions, but really the question is, I think Chairman Duran obviously pointed out as to why we're asking for this.
Right, yeah.
And that's a legitimate question as to why, if there could be some other administrative remedy, why would you request this? And requesting this because we feel it would benefit the town. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say that it would not also benefit Pride and certain parcels that they own in that district, but I think it would benefit the town. But I tend to not like to switch the tables or turn around, but what detriment would there be? And again, looking at the question before you for text change again, in order to approve it, the general standard, and again, I'm sure Mr. O'Brien can tell me if I'm misspeaking, but it's my understanding the general standard is whether or not, again, the proposed change would hinder the attainment of the purpose of the regulations and/or whether the health, safety, welfare, or property values will not be adversely affected. And so just looking back for a second and say, hypothetically, if this text change were to be allowed, again, it does impact more than just the corridor I was referring to, the Gateway Corridor. It does impact other areas. But how does it impact other areas? It impacts other areas by allowing additional potential applicants to come seek a special permit. And that's really, is that considered a negative in terms of the town or the zoning commission? I don't think so. I think potentially being able to apply without having to go through ZBA and really potentially being able to apply subject to conditions and subject to special permit, there's no negative to it, in my opinion. But that's obviously something that I think we'll discuss further after I now rest my initial presentation.
Just for the record, we've received the recommendation back from Capital Region, CROG, and that's all back. And that's one reason we have to wait a lot of times until we get that. Did you get a copy?
I did not.
Yeah, it just says is that the regional council found no interlocal conflicts.
They knew that they had to wait for that, so I just
Right,
didn't know if-
that's the reason why we
Yeah.
could not have held the meeting until, the public hearing until tonight.
Okay, any questions from the commission? Okay. Anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor or against this application?
So if you guys just want to let the public
Sir,
come up.
if you'll
and-
come forward, please, and your name and address.
Good evening. My name's Jeff Scott, and I live at 17 Connecticut Avenue, which is adjacent to the parcel that was placarded. I don't know about the other parcels that are involved with this gentleman and his company. My understanding is he previously had proposed some sort of a coffee shop or something like that for that parcel. Is that what the problem is? We can't fit that in because of the size of things? I don't know. But my biggest concern is the traffic up there. It's very, very difficult to get onto Enfield Street from Connecticut Avenue, no matter which way you're going, especially first thing in the morning. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with that area, but not only is there Pride, McDonald's, you also have other businesses across the street. It's a very, very congested area a lot of the time. And what I'm wondering is where the cutouts would end up, whether right now there's only a cutout on Enfield Street for the cars to come and go. However, I envision somehow one ending up over on Connecticut Avenue and how that's going to affect our local traffic. That's my concern. And I think I understand what they're saying in terms of trying to build business in our town, and as they kept emphasizing, it's only 1% of the town. But folks, it's a big town. It's still quite a bit of area we're talking about. And my question is, are these parcels all north of 91 up on Enfield Street? Are they all vacant? Are we not getting taxes on them as it is? The sense I get is we're not looking just to provide people a chance to walk and go get something. It was mentioned earlier, I believe by Mr. Baldock, about the commuters. That's I think what the target is, to get those folks coming down from Long Meadow a place to wheel in, get a cup of coffee and a donut, instead of going to McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts over at the Fast Mart or Pride. I mean, Pride offers all that stuff too. But it is a very congested area. It's very dangerous getting in and out. Originally, when that Pride was put there, I take it back. When O'Connell's was put there was a restriction that you couldn't take a left into there unless you went to the light. There was a one-way sign. You can't enter. That's long gone.
Yep.
And what happens is once the traffic coming south stops, now you got the traffic coming off of Booth Road, coming around the corner, which you can't necessarily see very well, because again, we've got 2 lanes of traffic going up and down that road.
Sir, I hate to stop you, but
Yeah.
his application for any project there has been withdrawn, am I right?
Right, there is no pending
There's no
project,
pending
and the commission can't
It's
consider any
really-
particular
I
project
just-
in.
No,
in
because
Thank you.
really I have to stop you because this is really pertains to the zone change.
Oh, I understand, but my
getting into
question,
other areas.
when the rules don't fit to our purpose, then we go and ask to have them changed, I guess. And I mean, and maybe that is part of what you guys do.
Way, yes.
But again, I want you to remember why that was made business local and how changes in that will impact the local area. That's all.
Okay,
Okay?
that's fine. And we'd invite you back if and when there is an application for that area.
And nice seeing you again, Charlie.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address the commission? Anyone else to address the commission? The commission?
Whenever is appropriate, I'd like to enter material into the record.
Fine.
So we did provide the commission. We did provide the commission with the. Can you hear me?
Yep.
We did provide the commission with the criteria that you would utilize to consider a zone change. And the criteria for many years was the consistency with your comprehensive plan of zoning, which is your overall zoning regulations. So the question would be whether or not your overall plan, which is the regulations themselves and the zoning map, that the suggested changes, it would be consistent and would not do harm to your overall plan. And of course, your overall plan goes back to, and when you talk about the plan of conservation and development, the main thing that you're looking at in a zone change is you're looking at what your land use plan is. So I did not hear anything with respect to the land use plan. We did provide at the request of the commission all of the neighborhoods that are affected here that were pointed out. Basically, starting from the high school and extending north to the town boundary bordering Long Meadow, there are business local zones all along that stretch. And as you well know, there are residential properties backing up to it. Your business local zone is a low-intensive zone that was created from what was then BG zones all around town. You left your BG zones for the more intensive uses, such as gas stations, and you created a business local zone. Then you go along Elm Street, across from the intersection of Palumba Drive, across from the intersection of St. Thomas Street, between Nantucket Community College and Georgetown Drive, including the Fox Hill Apartments, at the intersection of Elm Street and Shaker Road, on Shaker Road at the intersection of George Washington Road, Brainerd Road at the intersection of North Maple Street, Cranebrook Road, all the parcels on either side of the road. And then you have all of the ones along Hazard Avenue, as you can see there, abutting Middle Road, Palumba Drive, Oldfield Farm Roads, across from the intersection of George Washington area, and in Skidco Village at the intersection of Hazard Avenue, Skidco Street, and Taylor Road. And you may recall that parcel was before this commission not too long ago. And on Raffia Road, across from the street from the intersection of Raffia Road and Post Road, and at the intersection of Raffia Road and Post Office Road, and also at Weymouth Road at the intersection of Steel Road. So if you look at all of that, I don't think we can minimize it as 1% of the town, as a very significant number of neighborhoods that would be impacted. And the controls you put in there, including the buffer requirements, are designed really so that it allows local business, but not as an intrusion into the neighborhoods. And if you look at what's being asked here, you're basically looking at a 1/3 reduction in lot size, and that's a pretty significant reduction. I didn't hear any justification for that as to why we would need a 1/3. The notion that all of these other lots don't meet the standard, if you tear down what's there and you build something that meets the standard, it meets the standard. So I'm not sure how that computes. You can build something in accordance with the present standards, and if a particular lot has a a particular hardship unique to that lot, there is remedy within the zoning regulations to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and make your case based upon that particular lot. So we provided the commission with two resolutions. One resolution, the burden of proof is on the applicant to demonstrate that that this is consistent with the plan of conservation and development, and it's consistent with the comprehensive plan of zoning, that it will not have deleterious impacts on surrounding neighborhoods. If you feel that the presentation you heard tonight met that burden of proof, then we have a resolution that would be appropriate for your consideration. If you feel that it did not meet that burden of proof, then we also have a resolution for your consideration. So with that, I mean, we have introduced the adopted future land use map from the Plan of Conservation and Development. We've introduced the official zoning map, and we'd also like to introduce your comprehensive plan of conservation and development. These are the three bases upon which you would consider those, consider the testimony you've heard tonight, and render your best judgment on behalf of the citizens of Enfield.
Question? Roger, I have a question. We're focusing on the BL zoned parcels, but this change would reduce the lot area to below the BG district and the BLH and the BGH. So indirectly, it would affect the BG district. And as you mentioned, the BL zone is supposed to be less intensive and was created out of BG zone properties to be less intensive. This would make it more intensive than the BG zone. So I'm wondering if we would also have to look at every single BG zone lot, because there'll be, if this passes, indirect pressure to change that as well. So it's not limited to just those parcels.
That would go to your question of the question of the what's being proposed and its consistency with your comprehensive zoning plan.
Same thing for the frontage. It would reduce it below the required frontage for all BG lots, as well as BLH and BGH. It would also reduce it by a third. So indirectly, it impacts all of those other business zones as well.
That's another thing, you're right.
And the other thing is, the ZBA, am I correct that for a variance, the ZBA looks mainly at physical hardships on a piece of property, such as we're talking about here, the fact that it can't meet frontage or setback or square footage requirements, and that's the whole main purpose for a ZBA granting a variance?
Well, you would have to show unusual difficulty or hardship with respect to your property, not that you want to build a building that's bigger than what's allowed. The other comment that
But there is no plan right now.
No, there is no. What I'm saying is that the reason why the town of Enfield should open up all of your BL zones for potential greater intensity is one that the commission should carefully consider, whether that's consistent with the plan of conservation and development and your comprehensive zone. I mean, given the fact that it is your business, it was created as the least intensive business zone. That's a decision that this board has to make in weighing what was presented as opposed to what your current plans are.
Any further questions? The applicant wish to make any addition or?
I think I just have 6 quick points, and I'll be very quick.
Okay.
But with respect to what was spoken about, again, the first in asking the reduction and the change, it's not carte blanche. It's not a change per se for everything to be from 30 to 20, from everything to be from 150 to 1, or from everything to be from 60 to 40. It's just for the potential or the possibility of a parcel or any parcel in the BL district to go below those numbers, or a reduction of those numbers, subject to a special permit. And so I think when you talk about going from 30,000 to 20,000 and 10,000 square feet is a significant reduction. I'm not going to say it's not. But there's no request or there's no consideration to reduce the impervious coverage of 66% or reduce the maximum building coverage of 20%. And in fact, if you go from 30,000 to 20,000, you're indirectly reducing the maximum building coverage as well, a significant amount as well. So it's the low impact or the comparison of the development. And although you may reduce where it's located or change where it's located potentially via special permit, again, I mean, special permit, as you know, has the strongest teeth in the state of Connecticut for the zoning commission. But you're also not you're reducing the whole potential project. You're not just reducing where it's located, but the location. My second point, or my third point, again, would just respect to how it's impacted. Again, the big question in looking at the plan of conservation development is what potentially impact could this have? And whether or not it's significant, if it's any change at all, if it's any negative or detrimental impact, if it's a potentially positive impact, or maybe it's somewhere in the middle. And again, how would an owner of a BL district be impacted if this change were to be allowed? And they'd be impacted by one of two ways. If they currently own a BL parcel that complies with all the set forth bulk, lot and bulk requirements, there'd be zero impact. And so McDonald's hypothetically has absolutely no impact. Now, how would these other parcels, and again, I'm not as familiar with the other areas that Mr. O'Brien pointed out, but if there are parcels that comply with all the lot and bulk requirements, there's absolutely zero impact by this change. But those that don't comply with that, how would they be impacted? They'd be impacted by giving the commission an opportunity to review an applicant, by giving the commission or giving the applicant or a landowner in a BL district a second or an alternative, a choice between getting the variance, which they have now, they could get now, and they stand, or going before the zoning commission, provided they still comply with all the lot and bulk requirements, albeit the potential reduction of those three, conditioned upon the fact that they then would be before you at a special permit request. And I know, again, we're not talking about specific potential projects, but I think a point was made with respect to traffic and concerns of traffic on Route 5. And I could tell you that as it stands now, if an applicant were to get a variance under the lot and bulk requirements, if they didn't have a parcel that met it, and they were to get that variance, they'd simply be before you for the majority of uses of retail and business uses. For the majority of retail and business uses, they'd simply then be before the commission on a site plan review. And as you're familiar with, your review with respect to traffic and circulation is greatly diminished if you're not reviewing it pursuant to special permit. So if you were, and there was a previous coffee shop's been brought up, if you're for a coffee shop, not without a drive-through, obviously if there's a drive-through, that's subject to special permit. But if I'm going to put in a coffee shop in Route 5, I have one of two options as it stands now. I can get a variance and then come back before you and say, hey, I want a site plan, assuming you get the variance granted, or I can come back to the commission, and if it's, again, a parcel that doesn't meet the current regulations, I can come back to the commission and say, I'm thinking about putting a coffee shop. You say, that's good, but now it's subject to special permit. In most cases, it's site plan. In most cases, the uses along BL districts are just site plans, but now all of a sudden, sure, if you want this reduction, you want a consideration of these three factors, we'll consider it. Again, it's not automatic usage. It's not an automatic approval. We'll potentially consider it subject to special permit. And then circulation, access, traffic, curb cuts, where they can be located is all fair game. Whereas if it's a site plan, arguably, it's not as much of a consideration that the commission can think about. So I think it's a really important factor to look at compared to the plan of conservation development as to how could the town benefit. I think I've spoken about how the town could benefit, how the neighbors could benefit, and how obviously businesses and landowners could benefit, and what impact. Again, I just don't see any negative impact pursuant or consistent with the plan of conservation or consistent with the concerns of the people. The only impact it would have is the ability to have a reduced lot. Now, is that in and of itself negative, or does that hinder the plan of conservation development? Does that hinder the town of Enfield? I don't think so. Because if you want that smaller lot, it's a reduction, you're subject to special permit. And special permit is the strongest that the people of Enfield, the landowners in Enfield, and the zoning commission have to really have a say in terms of what comes where and how it goes and what it looks like. And that's why that condition, I think, is really a compelling reason to approve this proposed text change amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, anyone else? I have to open it to the public again since you've... anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor or against? Anyone in the public would like to speak in favor or against? Anyone in this public would like to speak in favor or against? Are you finished, Mr. Bolduc?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we've entered everything in the record so the commission can make an informed decision, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I'll close public hearing 2855.
Want a motion?
I don't know, it's up to you if you,
Discussion first.
that's up to you, discussion as you want.
Yeah, we can have a discussion.
Because I've been doing a lot of thinking and soul searching as this discussion's been going on. And I guess my understanding is that, a BL zone is designated as the least intense of the business zones. And the only thing that I can come up with, initially, is that, if you reduce the size of the lot, what it does is it forces the user to actually, utilize the maximum extent of the lot that he possibly could in order to get everything that he can get on it. Because I did some quick calculations in terms of, the way that the lot sizes are right now, just as if we had a rectangular lot. For 3,000 square feet, it would be 150 feet wide by 200 feet deep. So, and then what happens is that, if you have your side yards are 20 feet, it gives you, about 110 feet in width to where you can do some work. And the fact that, its width and its depth, the way it is right now, is 60 feet from the roadway or the property line, and the rear lot would be 10 feet, which gives you 120 feet to work with. So basically, you'd have, 160 feet wide by 120 feet deep. If we reduce it to 20,000 square feet, basically your lot size all of a sudden is only 100 feet wide by 200 feet deep. So if we start taking out the 20 feet for the side yards, we're only left with like a 60-foot wide by 140-foot deep. So you can sort of see where, all of a sudden you got to get cars in there, you got to get parking in there, you got to get, employees in there, you got to get trucks and traffic and everything else. That, it seems that, you'd increase the intensity that you would have to develop that parcel of land just to make it worthwhile if it was, reduced in size and we made all these modifications. But, the only other thing that I have to add is that, it would make sense if it was a pedestrian traffic zone versus a vehicular traffic zone. So, I think that I'm torn between, if we have people walking, I would really support this amendment and text change. But if it's all for, people, driving from point A to point B and there's very little pedestrian traffic, I think it makes very little sense. But I think that, just looking at the numbers and throwing down, intensities, it leads me to believe that, the maximum use of the lot would be definitely increased because of the fact that they don't have any fluff zones where they can, put more greenery and more, non-usable space, that you're forced to basically, do that. But that's only one opinion.
There's been a lot. I myself would prefer to really take it home and go over both what was said and digest it further. But that's why basically what you said is why I raised the differences in why we have the separate zones. Like Hazardville is a historic area that we wanted to preserve, and that's why the regulations are different, which he raised that they wouldn't. But what you said, right, that's what you wanted to keep. It was pedestrian-oriented, and we wanted to keep it pedestrian-oriented. So downtown T-ville was designed that way too. So each area really, because when zoning was put into effect, I guess, way back when, you had all these different sections that grew without zoning, and each one grew according to whatever. I'm told the start, that state line area was once at 4th of July time fireworks area. It was all fireworks shacks. That's what I'm told by old timers. But we've had a lot by Mr. Bolduc and his attorney, and by our own people. I'd like to put off voting, but that's up to you. I'm just one of the many. It's entirely up to you. Yes.
I just want to say, I agree actually with what Rich is saying, because I think the point is that when you're on Route 5, Enfield Street, that's a very major thoroughfare, just like Hazard Avenue is. And so you want to encourage that commercial stuff, but you also need that residential feel. Plus, you need a pedestrian-friendly area, and I think up that way is not very pedestrian-friendly. And typically, what the Plan of Conservation and Development is asking is that we move businesses forward and parking goes in the back. And from what you're explaining, how are you going to manage something like that? And so, referring to that, I don't think that's necessarily, what direction that we wanted to go in per se. So, but that's what that was all about is, it's because you're trying to make it more pedestrian friendly. While in Thompsonville, it's the side streets, you can, different areas like that, just as much as Hazard Avenue. You want pedestrian friendly areas, but is it ready? Is it an area that is going to be able to handle that type of a thing? I just don't think that, that's, to me, moving the building to the front and the parking in the back is what we're talking about when we reduce the setback. And we make it less. That's what, I think the point in the Plan of Conservation and Development is. So.
It's up to you. Yes.
I agree. I mean, that area is really a high-traffic area, and then to add more congestion into a smaller lot, it's just, but again, I heard a lot of information here, and I think I'd like to sit on it and do a little
Since
bit more
no
of my
motion
own.
is made, and I'll just, you, all right, go ahead if you wish.
To me, the way it was presented, they're asking for us to give them, well, when we set a standard, we set standard dimensions. Now they're asking for flexible dimensions. That if they want to have it 10,000 square feet less, then we could do it by special permit. We set the dimensions because that's the way we wanted it, not because we wanted to have 600 contractors come in and say, well, I'd rather have it this way or that way or the other way. That's why we have standards. I just don't see this working.
Roger, let me ask before I move on, could we have special compensation, please, to get the minutes of this particular meeting so we can have before the next meeting that we have at least a testimony from this if we don't vote, because I really would like to digest what was presented.
You would like the minutes of this meeting available for the next meeting?
Well, much before, right, so I have some time, not like on my desk tonight, or I'd like them ASAP.
We'll do our best so you understand we do not have an administrative
I
assistant at the
understand you
present time.
don't, yes. Okay, well, so do you want to, I hear no motion, I'll move along.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we continue.
You don't have to,
Oh.
because it's closed and it's automatically continued. We have so
Oh,
many
you have to have a
days
vote, Mr. Chairman.
Beg your pardon?
You have to have a vote to continue the item.
Okay, all right, then, I'm sorry, Rich.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we continue public hearing 2855 to our next meeting on May 18th.
It's not continuing the public hearing because you
Oh,
closed
I mean,
it.
I'm
You're
continuing-
continuing the consideration.
It's, the public hearing, is the numbers, is what I'm really saying, is the PH 2855.
Not as a public
Not
hearing.
as a public hearing,
Right.
as a discussion.
Right, thank you. This motion's made and seconded. Any discussion on that? I guess we really have. All in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay. Let me take this out of here so I have it. Okay, Rich, you ready to go again?
Yes. Okay.
I just want to get it right. That's all I want to do. Believe me, that's my second. So this is A.
Like he was throwing in Hazard Avenue area and Skinnico area.
This is
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we did. Because we took each area separately. Set this over there.
64 King Street.
It's further, I think you just went, it's right here. You just went by, it's further back than the next one.
Where do we go?
Do one more.
That's Pearson Way. That's preferred displays.
I just saw 17.
No,
Is that what you meant?
Supposed to be 2858.
2858.
Oh. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in the wrong place.
Wrong page. Right church, wrong pew.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm just gonna try to find it.
Public hearing.
58. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, 2858, 1654 King Street. Secretary, please take the roll.
Okay. I'll read the legal notice initially. The Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, May 4th, 2017, beginning at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Council Chambers, 820 Enfield Street, Enfield, Connecticut, concerning the following application. Public hearing 2858, 1654 King Street. Application for an Enfield map amendment to change a portion of property from R33 to I2. Rest of property is already zoned I2. JFP Realty owner applicant, map 13, lot 9, I2 zone, industrial 2. Application on file with the Office of the Town Clerk. And Charles Duran.
Here.
Elizabeth Ballard.
Here.
Alan Droynan.
Here.
Nicholas Fakis.
Here.
Charles Ladd.
Here.
Mary Scott.
Here.
Rich Suzak is here. Linda DeGray.
Here.
Virginia Higley, absent.
When you're ready, introduce yourselves, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dana Steele. I'm a professional engineer with J.R. Russo and Associates, and I'm here with Mr. John Petronella from JFP Realty. He's the owner of 1654 King Street, and I prepared the zone change map. Our firm prepared the zone change map that you have before you. Excuse me, let me get my notes. Okay, as the a legal ad indicated, this is a zone change for a portion of the property identified as 1654 King Street. It's a rear portion of the property that's currently zoned R33, and we're proposing to change that zone to I2 to match the rest of the parcel. The rest of the parcel is currently I2. The portion that we're changing is about 3.2 acres that we're proposing to change. Total parcel acres, 12.5 acres. This property, as you probably know, has been in existence for a long time. The use that was originally CLMP, and they, going back to the 40s, the last site plan for this application, looking in town records, was 1985, and CLMP proposed a parking area in this residential portion. So this area was zoned residential, but it was allowed to expand and construct parking areas in that area. That plan also showed outside storage in that portion of the property. So this property that's being proposed for a zone change it's been zone residential R33, but the use has always been industrial. So there hasn't really been a change in that use. That the applicant hasn't discontinued those uses, and at the time those uses were approved really without any buffers to the surrounding residential property. So if you look at the map that I have up there on the easel, I've kind of color-coded the map for you, and maybe I can just talk about it from here. We'll call that Exhibit 1.
I think we're going with A's tonight.
A's, okay, Exhibit A. Great. This is the only plan submitted with the application, but the areas that are highlighted in orange are the existing I2 zones. So you can see this property is on the corner of Depot Hill Road and King Street, Route 5, and so most of it is already I2. The area in yellow is the portion of the property in question. It's marked on your plans with a cross hatching, and it's highlighted there in yellow on the plan. So that particular portion is bounded to the west, which would be the top of the page, by the I-91 corridor. And there are some I-2 properties as well on the other side of the I-91 corridor before the river. And to the north are residential properties, so R33, and those are marked in green. So there is a residential house at property identified as 13-10 on that plan. That's the one closest to our property, just to the north. That is the abutter to this portion that is the subject of the zone change. It is the eastern abutter to that. There are residential zones across the street as well, but there are also industrial zones, as you can see as highlighted in pink. There's an I-1 zone on either side of that residential zone. So this is a area with mixed zones in this area, and there's also a BL zone, which is the restaurant there on Route 5, right at the corner of Depot Hill Road, just south of that intersection. That's a BL zone there. It's marked in blue. So that's the surrounding uses. I mentioned the 1985 site plan where CLMP came and expanded and modified their activities on this residential portion of the property back in 1985. And The other significant activity on the site came in the year 2000 when a cell tower was proposed and constructed. So in the year 2000, there was another utility type of use there, and that tower still exists, and it's shown actually on the zone change map. The location of that tower is indicated on the plan. We were here, I guess, a couple of months ago with an application for a site plan review and also a special permit for a new use on this property. There was some issues with that application with regard to the regulation. It was suggested that we withdraw that application and try to resolve those issues with staff. And the suggestions for how to deal with those issues were twofold. One was to deal with this a portion of the property that's zoned residential and change it to industrial so that it was consistent with the existing use. The other suggestion was a text amendment, which I suppose is still in the works. So we're here for the first part of that to look at bringing this site into conformance with the existing use. With regard to this zone change and its compatibility with your plan of conservation and development, I did a review the plan and wanted to note a couple of things for your information. First of all, with regard to the future use map on page 21 of the plan of conservation, and Roger, is that the map that's being blocked by my easel right now? There, perhaps the commission can see it. Thank you. And so, yeah, that's actually the future land use. There's also a map on page 21 of the POCD that is called Future Potentials, and on that map, this entire area in the south western corner of the town is identified as industrial area with a circle around it. But more specifically, that's sort of vague in general speaking. So obviously, there's multiple zones within that, but from a general standpoint, it seems that this area was viewed as an industrial area. But the future map that you see there as well shows all of that purple area that you see in the lower left-hand corner of the map, with the exception of that one little yellow strip it's right in the middle. That's a cul-de-sac, a residential cul-de-sac there. But everything else, other than that one property, is slated for potentially for industrial use. So changing to I-2, this portion is consistent with that map. Also, on page 249 of the Plan of Conservation and Development, under Chapter 12, Current Land Uses, Land Use and Zoning, there is a section on findings, sort of a conclusion of the whole matter. In the first bulleted item regarding findings, the last sentence of that paragraph reads, "While Enfield's zoning ordinance is clear and well organized and has served the town well, the town could consider adapting its zoning to match current and expected land use trends." And we would submit to you that changing this portion of this property, which is currently in industrial use, to an industrial zone is consistent with that finding. And so we would like to suggest that you consider approving this zone change. One other consideration in a zone change that you want to consider is regarding impacts to surrounding properties. As we already mentioned, this use has been here since the 1940s. And it has existed basically in its current form for most of that time. I think, John, you purchased the property in
Almost 20 years ago, 1997.
1997. There's the last site plan approval from 1985, essentially the same as today. So all of the uses have been used to this use for quite some time. And so we're not proposing to change it. We're simply proposing to make the zone match what's actually there. Secondly, the other concern is when you change a zone, well, what about future uses, right? Because you have an existing use, but that use could change in the future. And to that, we would just point out that your regulations require an approval process for that. So you can't just change the use in here without coming to this commission. And there are buffer requirements now. And so that a change of use would provide an opportunity to even improve the property. Whereas right now, the property is zoned residential, but it's essentially landlocked. There's no way to get to it except through an industrial property. So how would you develop it as a residential use? It really becomes an unusable space from the standpoint of the current zone. And so changing the zone, because there's no other access for it, we think makes sense. So we appreciate your time, and if you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I went out and visited the site, and it was, I don't see, this is not a topo map, but if you had a topo map, I believe that would show most of the residences in the R33 zone surrounding this property are quite elevated compared to this property. Are all those residences pretty close to King Street? Because that was my observation, is that those residences, changing this zone wouldn't have a major effect on those residences as if they were on the same topographical plane.
It's more hidden because it's down behind the hill.
That's the point I was trying to make, yeah. So are there any residences that are more at the same topographical level with this, or are they all pretty much up at street level of King Street?
I'm not aware of any that would be down low. I mean, King Street is
Yep.
Unless there were houses that were set way back from the road, then they'd have to be at about the road.
I didn't observe any.
Elevation.
And you mentioned this has been used as I-2 in the past. Didn't appear to be any use now other than the cell phone tower. So is that has there been any industrial use of this raw land before?
Yes, the area is all gravel surface. It's impervious. There's a parking lot in it that was constructed as part of that 1985 approval. There are street lights. I mean, there are light poles, and that whole area has been have been used by your business, John, right?
The construction operation, we've had various storage of equipment and some minor construction materials, whether it was some gravel, some topsoil piles, and some pipe construction accessories and so forth over the years.
And Mr. Chairman, just for the record, we did provide you with a photograph.
Actually, I'm looking at that photograph that we did get today, an area view, because I did try to look at it from the street, but it is, again, the change in elevation is really quite low. Because I guess what I see is, I see on the eastern part of that parcel, there seems to be a significant amount, on the southeastern part of that parcel, there seems to be a significant amount of development. Is that where you're talking about? You're storing all your equipment and materials for the construction company?
No, we're talking about the portion that's currently zoned residential, R33, which is that.
Right. So if I'm looking at this
so that's
map,
the northwest corner of the site.
Yeah, but on the the R33 site, it would be the southeast corner.
No, the northwest corner abuts up against 91. It's north of the pavement. I have a similar photo here. I don't know if it's the same as what you're looking at.
This is the parking lot here, right?
But isn't this being developed already? What's this development right there?
That is materials that he's
Yeah,
storing there.
right, so you're current,
This is the
so,
cell tower,
right, but you're currently storing these materials on top of, in that residential zone.
to some extent.
This
yeah.
is a, I don't know if this is on, can you hear me? This is the existing parking lot that was approved in 1985. It's in the residential zone.
Okay, and I guess that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at this resident, so there are improvements that are.
There are already improvements in that zone.
Right, and they're getting relatively close to the other residential zones that are there now, because the other residential zone must
Correct.
be like this
And
somewhere.
in 1985, it was approved right up to the property line. And in fact, there's a
Right.
fence that's still there, right on the property line.
Well, I guess the only point I'm making is that, you know, if this does go forward, obviously we would expect that you would be a good neighbor, and by being a good neighbor, you would create good buffers. So,
You would require a buffer.
right. And like I said, I can sort of see this thing encroaching and moving over that. It really should, you know, definitely look at the,
We can't encroach, we can't expand, we can't do anything without coming to you. And if we do, I imagine at that point, you'd be looking for those buffers to be maintained and honored.
all right. But I just wanted to indicate that it does appear that there are improvements that are being made there right now, and that they do exist, and, you know, they should obviously be controlled such that they don't necessarily, you know.
Yes, I think as I mentioned before, they exist now. If you don't approve this zone change, they're still going to be there, and the use is not going to change. What it does do is if it provides the opportunity to come in for a change that would then involve improvements such as greater buffers.
Right, and I guess that's what I'm leaning
that's a
towards.
good thing, right?
That's what I'm leaning towards, yes, in terms of as long as everybody's, you know, looking at it the same, you know, way, then obviously it would be beneficial to your neighbor to the east, you know, as well as, you know, your property, you know, that's going to be to the west of that. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? We'll open to the public. Anyone in the public would like to speak in favor or against this application? Yes, ma'am, please come forward. Give your name and address.
Sorry about that. That's all right. Could stay. My name is Sheila Materchuk, and I represent my mother at Mrs. Marion D'Alba, and she's on 1634 King Street. We are the property east. So, I have a few questions. I probably are asking the zoning board these questions and not the existing landowner, because I want to know how the parking lot was ever allowed to be built on residential. That's one. And I want to know how the cell tower ever got built if it was residential. That's two. And then I hear, if you don't approve this, it's going to happen anyways. The industrial that's going on now. We're on the low end. If you want to come out and look, come on back. We're on the low end. Our land goes downhill, left of the property that's industrial or residential. Theirs is a higher end. So what kind of buffers are we talking about if we move forward? That's another question. I had to write notes, so just bear with me. Oh, and I understand by changing the zoning, this is part number one. So what is part two? Is there going to be a different industrial park? I mean, God knows. We already have a big one on Mullen Road, and that's a lot of noise on the Moulton Company. I would hate to have something like that go on there. But I did have, when I was taking care of my mother 2 years ago and I was living at the facility, in this park here, this industrial place here, that's residential or not, the trucks that were in there were quite a few and noisy, 7:30 in the morning. Bang. I thought it was a gunshot. Not once, not twice. Multiples. Even my neighbors heard it. So I hope that stopped, because I have taken my mom out of her house for temporary. She will be coming back. And she wanted to know what was going on with her land. So, that's all I have to ask you.
Yeah, the commission, in looking at a zone change, looks at the zone change on its face, but it's public information, the questions you asked, so I have no concern in providing answers. The property owner is proposing to do other things there that are not of an industrial nature, to make it more of a business park. And so that was the basis in which the commission started to look at this property. I think that what the applicant said with respect to, well, you got existing conditions that are there, and by changing the zone for the and making the entire property the same zone, and then if the applicant comes back and wants those other, I would call them more business park as opposed to industrial park uses, such as the approval for the optometrist that went in there recently, the optometrist office. And I think you would agree that that's not an traditional industrial use. Then the 100-foot buffers would be put into effect, and so you would have a 100-foot buffer between your property and any use that would go on there, and you don't have that now.
Okay, when you say 100-foot buffer, what are we talking about? What's a buffer?
We're talking 100 feet in which it's treed or landscaped or what have you.
So it could be anything. See, I failed to mention to the board.
Well, we would be having a public hearing, and you have the opportunity again to speak.
Mm-hmm. Well, I failed to bring this to your attention. Our property is agriculture. It's not residential, it's agriculture.
Well, I don't know what the zone is.
It's residential. You may be using it as agricultural, but it's zoned residential.
Well, when...
Here's people that have a farm and will grow products on the side of the house towards the Route 5.
Yes.
Right.
So if my mom was to sell her property and she wants to sell it organically...
Some of the questions you ask, you really should be talking to the
whoever.
town planner.
I don't mind who I have to speak to.
Well, no, you'd have to talk to town planner on the time, because this is more pertaining to this property, really, not...
Yeah, but do you see how I arrived at it?
Well,
I would have
absolutely.
never been here if my mom didn't get a certified letter stating that residential property was going to be changed over into industrial property,
Right,
whatever
exactly.
number, I-2.
Yeah. Well, he's trying, as the planner said, trying to make things more to combining or coordinating things together, rather than having two separate parcels together.
Yes.
So, because he has other proposals, at which time you also would be welcome to come in or find out prior to what's happening. At the hearing, really, we don't usually give back and forth to the people because, well, there are other times where the legal notice is posted. We expect the people to go up to the office, look at the maps, and find out what the proposals are, because they're all a matter of public record.
Well, I did come.
Oh,
I was here
okay.
2 weeks ago.
Okay,
Matter of fact, I was here for the meeting and it got canceled.
all right.
All right. So it's not like I didn't look at but there was no proposal. There was no plan two.
No, there isn't, because this would be just, that this hearing would be the change of zone.
Right. The question is there any, what impact is there on your property by making the parcel that's next to you all one zone? And the answer really is that if the zone change isn't approved, nothing's going to change. And if it is approved, it allows the applicant to come back and propose things elsewhere on the property, and they would be put into effect a 100-foot buffer with your property. So from staff's perspective, you would be better protected if it was adopted.
I hope you're right.
I hope I am
Well,
too.
you have to remember, agriculture. You might be eating our vegetables.
Yeah.
So think about it.
I know,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else would like to address the commission? Anyone else would like to address the commission? Hearing none. Roger?
I concur with Dana Steele that this was part of a sit-down between the applicant, staff, their attorney, at the direction of the commission, and the question was, how can we work with the property owner to get the property into compliance, because over a period of time, the uses sort of morphed. And so we want to, so it's a cooperative venture, and staff actually recommended the zone change to the applicant, and we believe that it is in the best interest of, this area in terms of it will allow the applicant to pursue the things that they want to do and have been, most instances have been doing. Makes the lot consistent. Basically, otherwise you would have a 100-foot buffer on the industrial portion of the gentleman's property up against the residential portion of his property, which really would serve no purpose. By changing the zone and moving the buffer adjacent to the residential property, you would have a true buffer.
Okay, anything further than the applicant want to, okay. Then I'll close public hearing 2858. Any discussion? Any motion?
Yeah, I guess I just have one question in terms of, again, looking at the map, and I did notice the fact that there was some kind of development on the residential zone that I said, well, what's going on there? And from what I heard from, the discussions that we had is that it did come to planning and zoning, and it was approved by planning and zoning to allow them to put that parking lot on that parcel of land at that time. Roger, could you confirm that?
There is a file that does indicate that parking lot can be there.
Which parking lot?
Again, so, I mean, if it came before planning and zoning and somehow planning and zoning allowed it, I guess it's one of those kind of things where, and just as a side note, if we do make the zoning change and they have to become compliant with a 100-foot buffer, and that parking lot extends into the 100-foot buffer, do they have to move their parking lot to create that 100-foot buffer, or are they grandfathered in and said, oh, well, we only have a 20-foot buffer?
Okay.
We have had a discussion about what the potential site plan would be, and We also had a conversation, just like we had a conversation with the commission the other night about outdoor storage and percentage of outdoor storage. And so there have been conversations about where you could put parking, where you could put outdoor storage, where you could use it for. I think there's understanding as to where things are, and the applicants can speak to it if you want, but if they're coming in on special permit for the uses in the rear, then you would have the right to look at those items. And so, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Is that what you're asking, though, is it? Yeah, I don't think that's really what he's asking. He's asking if the 100-foot buffer is put in, then where's the parking lot in relation to?
Well, it's not really used as a parking lot right now. It was put in as a parking lot. My understanding, correct me, is it's basically used for outdoor storage at the
But
present
also,
time.
when he comes back, I'm sorry, it's closed, so
I was going to respond to the commissioners.
no, because it's
Yeah,
it's
my
closed.
mistake.
Oh,
My mistake,
Okay.
the public hearing was closed.
all right.
Well, my understand,
comes in-
but this is
You'll have control.
this is not a
of it.
parking lot at the
Right.
present time. I believe it morphed into outdoor storage.
But,
If
but
it
I
wa-
guess the only thing that I'm saying is that we would have better control as to, we can protect the residents, adjacent residents, by allowing it to turn into an I-2, because all of a sudden, some regulations kick into effect that
right.
would protect her, rather than right now, we cannot do nothing other than the fact that, it's laissez-faire, just leave it alone and leave it as it is.
Well, other than that, you're into an issue of
Right.
what is where and how did it get there.
Right.
And I think what everybody made a good faith on is to, rather than go that route, say, how do we bring this property into compliance so that the gentleman can proceed with his business, and yet we can, do justice to your zoning regulation, and we can protect the neighbors. And I think that this is a great spirit of cooperation between what the applicant agreed to do and what staff agreed to do at the request of the commission.
It gives us more control, as you say.
Yeah, I mean, that's all we can ask is for good faith and have everybody move towards a common goal.
Because this has always been a storage area way back from CLMP, and things were wherever they wanted to put them.
I'd like to put forth a motion to approve Public Hearing 2858 zoning map amendment to a change of a portion of the property from R33 to I2. Rest of property is zoned I2. 1654 King Street, map 013, lot 009. Applicant JEP Realty LLC. And in the resolution dated May 4th, 2017. Whereas the Town of Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission has reviewed an application for zoning map amendment for a portion of 1654 King Street from R33 to I2, map 013, lot 009, industrial and residential zones, I2, R33. And whereas a public hearing was held on May 4th, 2017, and whereas the commission finds that the proposed zone change from R33 to I2 is consistent with the goals of the Plan of Conservation and Development, and whereas the commission finds that the proposed zone change is consistent with the goals of the current Enfield zoning regulations, and whereas the commission finds that the proposed zone change will not pose a significant impact to the neighbors surrounding the property, and whereas the commission finds that the applicant has met the burden of proof in petitioning for zoning map amendment. Now therefore be resolved, the Town of Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission hereby approves application PH 2858 for a zoning map amendment for the portion of 1654 King Street, currently zoned residential 33, R33, to industrial 2, I2, and in accordance with reference maps and with the effective date of May 15th, 2017, and reference plans on this memo.
Second.
Good. Motion's made and seconded. Discussion? Again, this will bring things in more compliance and give us better opportunities for buffers on the residential end. And gives us a chance also to have more plans for the area. Then if you're ready for a vote, all in favor? Any opposed? No abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you, Attorney Fahey. It's been a while. Let's see, where are we?
Is everybody?
Give me a chance to catch up. Site plan review, am I
Previous.
right? 1708 site plan review. The applicant, well, we don't need it, it's Roger. Let's get this, all right, well, it's a site plan review if you want, well, he can, it's up to you. If you want him to talk, that's up to the commission. We usually have, if you, give your name and address, and if you want to make a presentation, I'll allow you. It's not a public hearing, though.
Hang on a second. Dana? Should I make my presentation?
Dana, make his presentation.
I'm not,
I mean, it's very,
I think this is preferred display, which is,
Yeah, it's
this
a
is the
site-
applicant making the presentation.
I'm sorry?
This is the applicant making the presentation.
Right, but I'm sorry, it's a site plan review, and it's listed as a site plan review.
Right, but the applicant gets to make a presentation.
Yeah, I asked him if he wanted to. We don't always have one, but we do allow them. Dana wants to talk anyway.
I was just teasing Dana. I said that the note, the last application, I agreed with him.
Oh,
You heard that,
that's
right?
a, yes.
He's here for the rest of the night. It's amazing.
I'm a contractor, and my name's Jim Aldrich of Aldrich Construction in Manchester, Connecticut. And I'm here really to introduce you to Preferred Display. I'm here with the owner, Ron Rousseau. And when I get done with my brief comments, Dana's going to make our formal presentation. I want to tell you a little bit about Preferred Display. Preferred Display was a company founded in 1985 by two brothers as a two-person company. And it has grown steadily over decades, and the company now employs over 100 people. They design and build cosmetic displays for lipstick, makeup, and other cosmetics. Until November 11th, 2015, their main manufacturing facility was a 65,000 square foot building located in a former mill building in Glastonbury. On that date, the company was struck by a tragedy. A fluke accident caused a fire that burned down the entire structure in a very short period of time. Thanks to Ron's quick thinking, all the people got out of the building quickly and safely that day, and no one was hurt. An impressive part of this story is that all the people never lost a paid day of work, which is a remarkable feat for a company this size. Immediately, they found a large space to rent in South Windsor and converted on short notice using older machines purchased in the open market. Everyone at Preferred Display then began the difficult process of saving the company by continuing to produce the custom manufactured displays their customers needed. The insurance companies wouldn't pay their claims in a timely fashion. This put a tremendous financial strain on the company. Even though the Rousseau brothers weren't sure that they could afford to continue without those necessary funds, they made a decision and bet everything on keeping their customers and figuring out a way to make product without a new permanent home or even the right equipment to do the job. As the months went by, what seemed at first to be an impossible task started to show signs of hope. Vendors, suppliers, and their dedicated workforce were all helping out. New machines were ordered with the latest technology to help lower costs and accelerate the manufacturing process. By mid-2016, the company was on firm enough ground to begin looking for a permanent home and soon entered a contract to purchase the building on Moody Road. They hired a general contractor to build a new equipment pad and to install a foundation for the new mechanical room. They counted on him to take care of the project from start to finish, including obtaining the necessary approvals. At the same time, Ron and his team continued to labor long days on operating the company in South Windsor and developing a plan to transition from a makeshift rented space to their new permanent home. After the pad and foundation were installed, Preferred was told by the town that the general contractor hadn't obtained the proper approvals. This is where my firm and J.R. Russo entered the picture. I've known Ron for years, not through work but from community service. We live in the same town, and Ron has served on the Board of Finance and Board of Education, and I've had the privilege to serve with him. I advised Ron to have the contractor that did the work unwind all the problems and obtain all the necessary approvals. It was the contractor's problem, and it was his responsibility to fix it. Ron took that advice. A month later, Ron told me that the original GC wasn't getting the job done, and he asked me to help deal with this. Dane and his team had Russo on board to be the point person with Roger and your committee. Ron also hired a structural engineer to assist us in evaluating the concrete work and confirm it adequate for the intended use. The work of the structural engineer and Dana Steele's team took more time. Tonight, Ron, Dana, and I are here asking for your help. Ron's firm has faced enormous challenges. He's faced them with courage, honor, and commitment to keep his company in Connecticut and all his people employed with the firm. He's navigated many challenges in closing out a multi-year insurance claim payment process. And now he needs your assistance to figure out a way to continue with the renovations and modifications of this facility in a timely way so he can move out of his temporary rented facility in South Windsor and consolidate his operations and have a new home for his 100-plus employees. Thank you for listening to this introduction. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Dana.
Okay, Diana,
Okay,
go to it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Again, for the record, Dana Steele, professional engineer with J.R. Russo and Associates. We prepared the plans that were submitted with this application. This property is an 8.1 acre parcel at 215 Moody Road. It's shown on the location map here. It's bounded to the east by Cybulski Road and to the west by Print Shop Road. It is zoned I-1. Sheet 2 of the plan set, we're calling our site plan, and I've colored it up here for you. So I'd first like to point out this area that I've marked in yellow here. Those are the concrete pads that were discussed, the concrete pads that were installed without approvals that the structural engineer has since looked at to confirm that they work for the intended use. The intended use on those pads is a dust collector, a dumpster that will collect the dust from the dust collector so that it can be shipped away, and another trash compactor, 40 cubic yard roll-off a dumpster. So those are indicated on the plans here. They'll be located behind the building so that you won't see them from Moody Road. They'll be hidden behind the building. In addition to the concrete that was installed here, we're proposing to the pavement was also installed here in orange. So there was an expansion of pavement as well as the concrete so that they could get at that was the intention, to get at the concrete. We're going to expand it a little bit more so that it works properly. And then a smaller concrete pad shown here in pink. That was for a building addition. There's some mechanical units that were going in that need to be enclosed. And all of these improvements, the mechanical pad for the dust collector and the room with mechanical equipment that's more electronic in nature, as I understand it, so that's why it needs to be in a weatherproof room. All of these are associated with environmental, environmental and energy efficiency standards. So Mr. Russo has been working with Eversource in bringing his site in here to have something that is going to be energy efficient. And so these are energy efficiency improvements that are being proposed to the site. So there's a small building addition, 12 by 50, and a concrete pad with mechanical units. In addition, there are rooftop units that are proposed on top of the existing building, which are identified here on the plan in blue. And so that's shown on your plan. They also show up on the elevation, so I'll show you that in a moment. In fact, let's go there now. Here's the architectural rendering of the each side of the building, and you can see this addition is small in relation to the overall building. It's not as tall as the building, so you're not going to see it at all from Moody Road. There are these in blue here are the rooftop units that are being added, and I can't tell you specifically what they're going to do, but they're a rooftop mechanical unit, part of ventilation, I imagine.
Air conditioning.
Oh, okay, air conditioning. So, so that is that's what they're going to look like on top of the roof there. In addition, the applicant has some big equipment that they need to bring into the building, and it won't fit through any of the doors. And so they were hoping they could have already done this work, but we're told they had to come to you to get approval first before they could make the door bigger. So that is included in this application as well. We have an elevation plan here, SE 2.0. On the west end of the building, there are 3 loading docks, and they're going to make them a foot higher. That's all. Just make the door a foot higher. Then the building's sort of a U shape, and there's an interior parking area kind of in the center of the building, and there's some overhead doors there as well, and 2 of those doors are going to be made both wider and taller. So I've highlighted there in yellow so you can see how those are expanding. If I go back to the site plan, sheet 2 of 4, you see that those locations I've shown here in pink. 1, 2, 3 doors on the west side, and 2 doors on would be the south side in that alcove area of the site. With regard to zoning requirements, this 8.1 acre parcel, as you can see, large building, a lot of pavement. It's actually already over the maximum impervious coverage of the site. So when this concrete pad was added and this extra pavement was added, it increased the nonconformity, and that can't be. And so to mitigate that, what we're proposing is to remove this pavement area here, which frankly I don't know what Olympia Sales did with this space, but the new owner has looked at it and says, I don't need this pavement here. So this green area here and a small green area in the concrete patio area in the front of the building, which is actually below the road, you don't really see it there, will be the impervious area will be removed so that we match the impervious area that's being added. Net result, no change in impervious for the site. So I think that takes care of the issue of impervious coverage. Building coverage is still okay with this small addition. We're not over the allowed building coverage. And parking. The site has 170 parking spaces, which we've depicted and numbered on the plan. As the applicant mentioned, there are over 100 employees on the site. They have over 100 employees currently. They think maybe in the future, maybe as many as 140. So based on that total, the required number of parking spaces would be 154. As I said, they have 170. Now, staff submitted a recommended motion, and there were some conditions of approval. And one of the conditions in there was to eliminate some of the spaces that didn't conform with your dimensional requirements. There's some, and I've highlighted them here. In this area, you can kind of see how the spaces are pretty close to the island there, and there's not really enough room for the cars to back out. I don't know. That's how it's striped. That's how we're just showing what's there. We didn't design this, but we're just showing you what's there. So part of the one of the conditions, I think it was condition number 8. No, I'm sorry, number 7. No, 10. Sorry. condition number 10, was to eliminate these spaces, as well as this one right on the corner that's out right next to the street, because the angle is sort of boxed in by the island, and then 2 that are encroaching over the property line. Although my guess is what happened here is that at the time that these spaces were constructed, they were on the property, but there was a taking in this corner. So for public improvements to build these roads, the town or the state or somebody took took over this corner of property by eminent domain. They took it and created the nonconformity. So now the spaces are over the property line, but since we have 170, we lose these 9, we still have 161. And then there was also a comment about handicap parking spaces. That was condition number 11. The site only has 1 handicap space. So that's not in conformance. So they'd like us to bring that up to conformance. It requires 6 for this many parking spaces. So that might lose an additional 5 spaces. We're still at 156, more than the 154. And like I said, the 154 was based on an optimum, best case scenario. Maybe we'd have this many employees at some point. So I think to sum that up as quicker, which I probably could have just done, is to say the parking works. But I think just wanted to explain why that was the case. And lastly, just to conclude my presentation, we do appreciate the staff's report with their suggested conditions of approval. We'd like to state for the record that we do not object to any of the conditions. There are 6 conditions that are numbers 7 through 12, which are specifically related to the site, which involve maybe some plan changes that I just wanted to mention specifically. The first one, number 7, the fire department wants another hydrant on the site, and so we agreed to install that. We have the fire chief here, actually. He's not nodding his head. Number 8 was cross-sections for those concrete pads. We agreed to provide those cross-sections. The pads are already there, but we're going to provide the cross-sections as I guess, for the record, so that is documented depicted in a diagram format. Number 9, a maintenance plan. We did include a maintenance plan on sheet 4 of the plan set, post-construction maintenance schedule. And so I highlighted here on this sheet so you can see, but leave the condition in there, and that way if there's any details that staff wants to modify with regard to that, that will be taken care of by that condition. Number 10, the removal of the parking spaces which don't comply with the dimensional spaces. We've already noted where those were, agree, and it doesn't affect our calculate parking requirements. I guess the one question maybe would be helpful to know from that going forward is, when we remove those spaces, can we just stripe them, or do we have to remove the pavement? Because that would be more cost.
Don't strike those spaces.
Okay, so we could restripe them. That would be helpful. And then number 11, the handicap parking. We agree to add the additional 5 handicap spaces. And number 12, town notes. We agree to add the town notes. So thank you for your time.
Okay.
Hope I got through that quickly. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Well, okay, so if you have any questions, they're here. Okay.
Dana, I just have one. In terms of the reports that were done by Mr. Lapointe, I didn't see any in the end. Could you just summarize what they said?
Want me to tell him?
Sure, if you want to do that.
I'm a structural engineer myself, PE. We hired Bill Lapointe to come out, and we had the detailed information from the contractor that did it. He gave us drawings and cross-sections, and he came out and inspected the site. We drilled a hole through the concrete to get the thickness of it. We got the bill of materials that were used in the pad and foundation construction, and then we dug a test hole to confirm that the foundation system for the storage shed was put to the below frost. And really, because the mechanical equipment room is 12 feet 14 feet, I think it's 12 feet, 12 feet deep by 50 feet long. It's 600 square feet. It's a small structure. And the actual point loads on the slab are very minimal. I can go into more detail if you'd like. I don't know.
No, I guess I'm just sort of just reading his report just really quick. Again, I just wanted to see for my own,
Sure.
information as to what he said. Thank you.
Questions? Well, I was going to mention that and then just give them a copy. We are in the receipt of a letter addressed to the Planning Zoning Commission and myself attention, and it's a letter to people that if it were a public hearing would be here to have some concerns. Do you have this? And
No.
Well,
No, the woman only brought it in about 4:30 today
So I'll
and
give
handed
it
it
to
to
you,
us, so we didn't have a
and,
chance
you
to
could-
get it to the applicant.
address their concerns.
I just want to clarify for the commission, that letter says she was told that she couldn't speak. What she was told was it wasn't a public hearing. We didn't tell her she couldn't speak. So then she wrote out the letter, and we told her we'd get it to you.
Well, we don't allow even the applicants generally to speak. Well, I do. Okay, I have a memo here, or two memos. One from engineering stating that there are no engineering concerns with the proposed site modification, and another from the fire marshal. And just pointing out that the hydrant, as he was mentioned, that was requested. And I'd like to add this because it's seldom that we get this kind of compliment, but we fully support this project and would like to add that Mr. Russo has been excellent to deal with from day one. And that's a compliment. And we are looking forward to having his business as a great addition to the town of Enfield and the Shaker Pines Fire District. And I agree, it's a great addition to the town, and like to welcome them to the town. I guess the other town's loss is our gain.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that from the town standpoint, Mr. Aldrich, since he got involved in the project, has done a fantastic job. He's been nothing but cooperative. It did get off on the wrong foot. We're delighted that, he took over the project. As you can look at the aerial photograph, you get some sense of the size and the scope of that building. And the number of employees, and anytime we can take a building that's not being used and put 140 people back into it. So we would.
Inside that building, they used to have sales, Olympic sales. They'd have clearance sales. And I've been inside that building.
But we do appreciate the spirit of cooperation, and we just made those few tweaks, and we also appreciate the fact that they were willing to accept those as part of the conditions of approval.
Chair will entertain a motion. Don't act too fast.
Also point out that that the assessor shows this as 2 lots, and this application will make certain that they're combined. They probably were combined as an operation of law, because the parking lot has been used for the other property, but they're still being carried by the town as 2 lots, and so by doing this, we would notify the assessor that they're in fact merged, and let's make one property card.
The deed's been filed. The merger was actually filed.
Perfect.
Go ahead,
I'll make a motion. I will make a motion to approve SPR 1708, energy efficiency improvements, including a 600-square-foot building addition, exterior dust collector and trash compactor, parking lot modifications under map 099, lot 0005, applicant Preferred Display, Inc., as described in a whereas memo by Roger O'Brien dated May 4th, 2017, which states, whereas the town of Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission has reviewed a site plan application SPR 1708 for energy efficient improvements, including a 600 square foot building addition, exterior dust collector and trash compactor, parking lot modification, and site plan approval for site use. Whereas a site plan review was entertained and considered on May 4th, and whereas the application has been found in general conformity to the Enfield Planning and Zoning regulations, now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission hereby approves application SPR 1708 for site improvements for the exterior of the building, parking lot modification, and site use at 215 Moody Road, Industrial I-1-1 zone in accordance with the submitted application narrative and reference plans in this same memorandum, approved with 29 conditions that are included in that May 4th memorandum from Roger O'Brien.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes.
You do? Yes, sir.
And glad to see someone coming to town that has not only responsibility to his customers and to his stockholders, but also to his employees.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not a common thing to see these days, and it's really appreciated. Thank you very much.
Our employees put us back together.
Okay. Anybody else?
Good to have you.
All in favor? Opposed? And no abstentions.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Don't tell me you're leaving, David.
You want me to stay?
Okay. Okay, next on the agenda, if I get it right. Site plans.
We have a 5-minute recess.
Sure. If you want one. Okay.
Can you make it 2?
All right.
Oh, yeah, break. We're taking a break. Okay.
Oh, Roger.
Here, you can sit in the middle. What the hell is that?
You let us back? They don't say much.
Oh, boy.
Hired you. 20 minutes to 10, this is a pit stop. Walk for a minute.
Go get a drink of water.
Just, we're gonna time you, too.
Let me push my chair in. Oops, okay.
I have your chair.
Okay.
They need breaks. That or I'm on the floor. A long time.
Mr. Rogers doesn't go blah, blah, blah so much.
Okay.
Here at 7 or a little bit before 7.
Yes.
I'll get here, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
After this site plan, it's like.
We have 3.
So you have one in the spare?
Bill and I
Yeah.
each have one, and one stays in the car. Couldn't find any of them tonight.
Feeling any better?
Not too bad today. Take enough Tylenols and ibuprofens and all that sort of stuff.
Gotta keep active, you're right.
I fell again in a parking lot, in a garden full of rocks.
That doesn't help a whole lot, no.
I killed my back. And it was my birthday on top of it all.
Too much celebration.
I'm telling you.
Libations.
You gotta be careful, you're right. But you gotta stay
It's
active,
just that
you
I
gotta
have
keep
to
moving.
walk once
Yeah,
in a
you gotta move, you gotta move.
I've been sitting since 7, now 6. 10 o'clock.
Are we ready?
Yes, right. Good to
Yes.
see you.
Thank you very much. Kiran Majmudar, Registered Professional Engineer, LP Consultants. The project involves 3 Pearson Way Allied Community Services. Their main purpose is to serve the mentally, intellectually, physically handicapped people in town and in the community. And that has driven them to provide or make some changes to the site. With me on my left is Carol Bonnet, she's CEO of the organization, and on my right is Deb Arrietti, she's the facilities manager, responsible for all the properties. Before I go into too many details, the site plan as presented basically provides for additional safety and streamlining of traffic when such patrons, clients, are either dropped off or picked up from the facility, and the facility provides all the training to such patrons, such clients. And there are many with different kinds of intellectual, physical, etc. challenges that need a lot of help because they're driven in vans that have all kinds of lifts up and down. There are no roof shelters available during snow, rain, what have you. So one purpose of the safety, in addition to providing a safe pickup and drop-off lane next to the building, is also a shelter, a canopy on top. So canopy is number 2 element. Number 1 element being the actual pickup and drop-off lane for the dedicated vehicles. And what that allows them to do would be to have the other people that drop off some of the patrons and pick them up to have a separate lane of traffic as well as parking. So those are the 2 elements as far as the front of the site is concerned, and that's what this plan presents. Additionally, on the west side, they are planning to add additional parking of almost 18 spaces, which is necessitated by the staff needs for the organization. Before I go too far, on that side, the west side of the additional parking will require Commission's approval for a side yard variance from 10 foot required to somewhere around 3.9 feet to 3.6 feet. So given these 3 elements, I'd like to have Carol talk about a little bit of the organization and what is exactly the purpose of this safety improvement. Okay?
Okay. Good evening. As Karan said, we provide services to individuals with intellectual and physical disabilities. Approximately 200 individuals come through our parking area on a daily basis, twice a day. Many of them to receive services at our 3 Pearson Way site, and many to go on to jobs in the community where we provide job coaching and other types of supports. So in the facility, we have individuals that are in wheelchairs, use walkers, or have gait issues. And at this time, the way our parking lot was designed originally back in the 80s, with a much smaller number of individuals using the building, we have people that have had very close calls with the cars driving through, because right now people drive through to park. They're going right alongside of the vans that are dropping people off or picking them up. People walk from the cars straight through where the vans are driving. And our concern, our major concern, is the safety. So we asked for a design that would improve the safety of the individuals that come to our program every day. We applied for a State of Connecticut nonprofit grant program, and we were successful in receiving a grant from the State of Connecticut to help us pay for this improvement. We've made some changes based upon feedback, and we have about, 6 months to finish the project now, or we'll have to ask for an extension from the state. So we have some time constraints here to get it done. We also, the sooner we get it done, the sooner our clients are safe. If you came by our parking lot at some point, you would see how busy it is and how much of a need there is to make it safer for our program participants.
In case the commission is interested, some photographs of not proper traffic circulation right now.
We don't, yeah.
Just in case you want to look at it, is that okay?
We don't have control over all these people because they don't all work for me. If they work for me, I could say something to them. But there are people driving their own family members, and some of them have had some close calls walking across the parking lot. And then there's other agencies that drive their residents to our program, and I've had to talk to their executive directors for assistance with ensuring that they drive safe. So through our best efforts of trying to orchestrate safe use and drop off and pickup, we still don't feel it's safe enough. And we really hope that we're able to improve this parking lot for the people's safety.
One person walking in the middle of the cars.
Yeah, it's not good.
And the design that we have here would prevent that. There will be a curved island with a fence installed in it.
That's okay.
That would
why
prevent
I'm here,
people
is to-
who park in the front of the building from walking in between the vehicles that are waiting to drop off or pick up our program participants. So they wouldn't even be able to walk in between the vehicles anymore.
Or drive by them.
Or drive by them, because the traffic will be one way coming in for parking and one way coming in to the bus lane. So it totally separates the bus lane from the parking and makes it a much safer setup than what it is right now.
I misspoke about the variance on the side parking. It's a waiver that be required that the Planning and Zoning Commission can grant. Thanks, Roger.
Questions from the commission? Rich?
Because the only one I did notice is that you mentioned in your narrative that, you might require a variance for the, or a waiver for
Waiver,
your
yes.
parking on, the west side of the building, I believe.
Yes.
In terms of, have you already gotten that so that, or are you going to get that?
No, I think our understanding is it's the commission's purview to grant that
Okay.
waiver.
All right.
We've got this Google map that we were provided, and I'm looking at it,
Canopy, right?
and I'm seeing all these cars that are parked already in your yard area and not in your parking lot. Is this, and I want to make sure, because you have vans that are parked in the yard and that, are you going to have enough parking spaces with this new plan of yours for all of these vehicles that you have around? Because there's also empty spaces, and it's like, why didn't they park in the empty spaces? Again, I'm just guessing that
I can tell you
somebody
why
calls,
we have
somebody knows.
empty spaces, depending on when the time the picture
I'm
was taken.
just sure it's
Yes.
coming and going, but I'm just curious if this new plan will address all this parking in the yard that you've got going on here with your vans in your employees' cars, because it's pretty extensive that you've got them parked in the yard.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, the intent of the plan is to eliminate the parking that's actually on their neighbors, not even on them.
Some of the vehicles that you're looking at, where you see all the vans, that's actually a gravel parking area.
yeah, I've been to
Yeah,
your property,
that's-
but I
yeah.
also see vans in this photo parked on grass, not on the gravelled area. That's why
And that's what we're addressing on the, I believe, the east side. Yeah.
The van parking issue was addressed. We came before the commission a few years ago, and it is indeed gravel parking, not paved parking for the van in the back.
I understand. I've been there. I've walked your property. You guys weren't there, but I was there. But I'm seeing a photo that was taken, and you have vans that are not parked on the gravel. So I want to make sure that that would not continue. That's why I'm asking.
And it would not continue. That might have been on a weekend or a weekday when people came and went, and that's why there's less park there. But the proposed park, and is this the west side?
Yes.
That's east side, the paved parking spaces that are shaded on the map. That the cars that are parked on the grass in that photo would be parking in these paved spots. This is
East
closer
side,
to the building than where they're parked on that Google photo. That we weren't aware. There's a tree line there, and the property line actually is closer to the building.
We have
There are
a,
two things that I just need to, well, I don't know. if
we
this
have
is-
a letter from John Cabibbo, dated the May 4th, and their impervious surface, it doesn't, the maximum allowable was built out to 66%, and it's significantly less than 66% even with the addition. And he has no engineering concerns with the modifications. Excuse me. Now, one other question, the color of the canopy, is it?
Well, no, it'll be an open, three-sided, the fourth side of the building, which is also actually open, and just a roof.
So it's an open
Yes,
canopy?
it's open.
Okay.
So it's not covered, so color doesn't matter.
But it has to have some support and so forth.
It'll have structural steel columns, it'll have structural steel structure at the roof level, it'll have the concrete foundations.
But you're not using any color on it?
There'll be color that would match the existing aesthetics of the
Well,
building.
that's what I wanted.
Tan.
Yeah.
Tan.
Tan.
Well, if that's what the building is, then,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, any questions? Further questions? Anything addition, Corinne? No?
No, unless you have questions, we can go into all kinds of
Okay, I'll-
details, but some landscaping issues were raised, and we are adding some landscaping to mitigate some losses near the building.
And we'll actually end up with more parking.
Just for the commission's information, the section that was referred to is on page 111 of your zoning regulations, and it says the commission may reduce or waive the required side yard parking set for any lot in an industrial district that abuts another lot in such district if there's shared access agreement between the properties, or it is determined that there will be no adverse impacts to the abutting property from such reduction or waiver. So I think when Karan said that he was looking for a waiver, that's what he's referring to. It's up to the commission as to whether you find that acceptable.
What's the waiver you're requesting?
From
Want to
10
explain
feet,
the waiver?
yeah, from 10 feet to 3.9 and 3.6. That's the waiver we are requesting for the parking portion only.
Okay, let me close the hearing, then unless there's something further. Get the right number. Let me close SPR 1711.
Mr. Chairman, the other thing that, in the draft resolution we gave you, in reviewing the site plan this afternoon, we don't believe that the disabled parking spaces are the right number, size, or location. And so we would add the same condition as was in preferred display, that the current regulations for disabled parking need to be followed concerning number layout and signage to the, so that would be
The person
that
who
would be
makes
an
a
additional
motion.
condition.
Pay attention to that, please. We aren't going to have a motion?
Ron, they want to know where's the 2.7 feet that,
That in the actual.
it's on, it's in the parking lot layout.
Okay, that's what I'm looking
Conditions
for.
on page,
Okay.
it starts at the bottom of page 110. It talks about parking area setbacks and landscaping standards. So it starts at section 10.10.7, and the specific language would be under VI, and it's what's in bold there. So if you determine that there would be no adverse impacts to the abutting property, then you could reduce the required setback on the property line. And so I guess you got to go back and, if you could, Mr. Chairman, it could explain again as to where it is that this 2.7.
Yes, he did. He did. I thought before I closed it, but all
I
right.
guess Mary didn't understand.
Just go ahead.
The easterly side of the property, where you see shaded area, it's all industrial zone abutting, as well as this, the whole thing is an industrial park. So where you see the shaded area on the easterly side of the property, that's where the 10-foot setback for parking pavement is required, and that's where the applicant is looking for.
Just on the eastern side of the property, Mary, if you make it.
If you're looking at your plan,
Motion
it'll be
maker.
on top of the plan.
It's where the cars were parking in the grass on the picture.
Can't
Yep.
find where I'm at.
If they're looking at a photograph.
Now you're figuring where that is. Thank you. There it is. Okay.
I can't make the motion, so
Yep.
now it's on the eastern side of the property. Okay. Now, go ahead. Now, the other part, hold before you do it. Now, Roger had another addition to the main motion, correct, or when we get there?
Accessible
Well, you.
About the handicap.
1, 2,
Yeah, I had the thing about the disabled parking.
1, 2, 3.
But in addition, the motion has to say that you're specifically waiving in accordance in accordance with 10.
Well, we have to have the waiver first and a vote on the waiver first. And that's what I'm waiting for, but while we're getting that down correctly, you had that addition to the
Right,
conditions.
and what I'm suggesting is the language read, the current regulations for disabled parking spaces need to be followed concerning number, layout, and signage.
Okay, so when we get to the the other motion, that has to be added.
Parking that could be considered.
Okay, I'd like to put forth a motion to waive our zoning regulation requirement 10.7A VI and reduce the required setback parking requirements for SPR 1711
Just that eastern side, though, right?
Yeah,
on the eastern side.
right.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor. This is a waiver, okay. Unanimous, 700.
That's the waiver, right?
That's the waiver. Now, the motion for the approval of this project.
I'd like to put forth a motion to approve SBR 1711, site plan application for changes to the arrangement of the parking lots and minor building modifications, 3 Pearson Way, map 075, lot 0003, industrial zone I-1, in a resolution that's dated May 4th, 2017, drafted by the Planning Department. Whereas the Infield Planning and Zoning Commission has received an application for the rearrangement of the parking lots and minor building modifications to 3 Pearson Way, map 075, lot 0003, industrial zone I-2, and whereas the proposed changes to the parking lots and minor building modifications are in conformance with the current infield zoning regulations. Now therefore it be resolved, the Enfield Planning and Zoning Commission hereby approves SPR 1711 for the changes to the arrangement of the parking lots and minor building modifications to 3 Pearson Way according to the reference plans and with the following conditions. And there are 25 conditions with an additional condition regarding handicap parking spaces and concerning the number of them and the layout of those parking spaces. And the signage.
Applicant have any problem with the conditions?
None.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous, no abstentions, it's unanimous. Good luck.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good to see you again, Corinne.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Your organization is a true credit to the community. You do really good things for the population
do.
of Enfield, so.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, home occupation review. Let me start with one thing, because I've discussed this with Roger, because Nick would also know, and Charlie, because we handled this before. And Roger was talking with me, and the thing is, I feel that my lot moved his operation to his house. Mr. Milat, I believe, used to own the package store up the street. And we required of him certain requirements. And my thought was that this gentleman is doing the same basic thing as he asked to do. And I felt that really they should be doing the same thing. So I don't know if you did get Mr. Milat's records. I haven't read them or seen them here, but that's all I felt. And as I recall, and Charlie and Nick can help me out, that we required that to be hot wired to the police station.
There were a number of security measures
And
in the,
we don't have a letter yet from the chief, and that's where it came from, because I guess each one was questioning up the ranks, because I see a letter in here on our table from one of the lieutenants. So I just think it's fair if we require one,
Do it for one.
because to me, if someone knows that there's a person that has, well, even if it's one gun, it's just a sign to try to get that gun.
Rick Rochelli's memo with respect to the home inspection, it raised a number of issues concerning guns that were in display, but the applicant said would not be part of the home occupation, that those were his own private guns, and they were not secured. There was also ammunition that he said was not part of his
Well, that's
part of
true.
his
There are
home
different
occupation.
regulations that we don't even control here. If an individual has his own private gun, they
so-
don't need to come to us. They
Right,
go to the
so-
police station.
But it was kind of hard to tell, like,
But our job,
what's locked up as the gun sale and what's not locked up. It's not part of the gun sale. So it really raises a question, because you don't have a right to a home occupation. Your regulation says a home occupation permit may be issued. It also said that it must be that your regulations are to promote health, welfare, and public safety.
well, that's what I was just going to say, was that one of our main charges is public safety. And that's why when Mr. Milot came to us, he did have a public hearing because of that, because sometimes the neighbors don't feel comfortable.
I didn't vote for it.
I don't know, but that's up to the rest of the commission. That's what we did before, and
Be consistent.
I felt, yeah, right, I felt we should be consistent, but
Well, Mr. Chairman, if the regulations say that a permit may be issued, but also says it's got to be consistent with health, welfare, and public safety, you can review what's before you and make a determination whether you think it meets the threshold of health, welfare, and public safety that you're comfortable with. And if you don't, you can not issue the, you can turn
All I'm
the
saying
application down.
that to me, it does, but I also think that they should follow the same, when they do this, they should follow the same setup that we had required of another individual that asked for the same thing.
If we denied this without prejudice, then the person could come back in with the extra information that the chairman's talking about, I would imagine.
Right.
There's no passage, but I mean, when you get a home, this is when it came in, and you can read I've scanned it, and we had before, you read the literature here that we have. I don't know, it's a, yes.
Wasn't he before us, before for?
I think that might have been his father, or I don't know if in a relation.
I thought he had a gun business in town somewhere.
I don't know, this is John, I think there was a Fred, but I don't know if that's his father or if they're related or not. But I don't know anything about guns. The only gun I can recall is my
Yeah, no
Well, there was a gentleman here a few months back that you did have a whole list of conditions on that you then approved.
So whatever you want to do is good. Go through, take a few minutes and take a look at this and see what he wants to do.
Give us the conditions.
My understanding is that Rick reviewed those conditions with the gentleman, and he did not feel that they were warranted.
Not our choice, not his.
That's
Your decision.
That's why it's here.
That's why it's on your desk, sir.
You got to make well, they couldn't make the decision anyhow. Beg your pardon? Well, no, that's what you would do is this is a review, so it's not even an SPR. So is this on any time clock?
No, it's not on a time clock.
So you can vote to continue with it?
You could table it. You could deny it without prejudice. You could make a list of conditions and approve it with those lists, and the applicant
Well,
would have to comply.
What you do is, if you want to continue it, you want to see the conditions we put with with the previous person that was going to run a gun order. I guess what was. Nick, help me out. Was it, he was doing orders too by same.
Internet orders, yeah.
Yeah, internet orders
He was
too.
doing
Sales.
it down in the cellar? that
In the cellar,
fellow?
yeah, right.
Down in Green Valley?
Oh, no, I
Not
don't
Green
know.
Valley,
Yeah, I think it was,
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't remember where, but
yeah.
yeah, down in, you know,
So if you get his, then
Down the hill.
if that's, I would say, bring it in and take a look at it, and if you want to do the same thing,
Yeah.
and if you pass it with those regulations and he doesn't want to do it, then he doesn't get the permit. That'll be his choice.
I'm against.
If you want to give him the permit, you give him the permit without the conditions, but
Make a motion to continue this to the next meeting on the 18th.
second.
motion's made to continue to the 18th, and that we have the previous conditions that were made for, all in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, let's see, what else, where are we next? Correspondence, I don't think we had any. Did we have any correspondence? Help me out. No.
No.
Mr. Struney has, okay. Requesting permit for an open family hair salon. Are these coming up? Oh,
I'm all closed up. I thought we were done.
well, you got commissioners' correspondence. There weren't any that I know of.
Oh, dear.
Commissioner correspondence, anything from any commissioner?
I do.
Yes, sir.
I think it's been a great partnership between or among the commission, town staff, and local business, because if you drive around, the parking lots are beautiful with all the trees that are blooming.
Aren't they? Yeah. You get down Palumba or Freshwater and see all the blooming trees. It's really gorgeous. And they don't bother. That's why I suggested for the automobile dealers, if they wanted to, get those things out of there and go into some of these nice flowering trees. But anything else? Okay, authorization for administrative approvals. What have you got?
Oh, we don't have anything for tonight. for that,
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
then applications to be received. There's some stuff in my book. It's public hearing 2859. What's that? Is that on the agenda? Is that coming up? Oh, all right. To be
Scheduled for a public hearing on May 18th.
Oh, okay, so they're in the book already.
Right.
Oh, it's okay.
We have, Mr. Chairman, we have six pages now of applications that are in some form of moving forward, so.
All right, I know.
Must be doing something right.
Yeah, you get me confused, which is easy. Yeah. MTA, what's MTA? Is that
That's a massage therapy permit.
Oh, that's separate from an SPR and a public hearing?
No, I don't, the reason being is that the massage therapy is a combination of the zoning regulations. There's also a local ordinance that requires the town manager to interview the massage therapist and determine character. And that ordinance, the town manager has delegated that to the director of planning. We don't have any standards, but it simply says that we are to introduce, we are to conduct an interview of the masseuse and determine character. So that's one part of the application. I guess I've been involved in about 5 or 6 of these since I've been here,
Involved in interviewing masseuses? We've had 5 or 6?
yeah, no, I mean, I've been asked by the town manager's office to conduct the interview. So, I mean, I'm not sure what the purpose of this, ordinance is, but the ordinance does say that you make an application to the town manager if
No,
you
I'm
want
not
to.
asking the ordinance. I hadn't heard we had
So
5
that's why it has that number, because it refers back to the, so it's a two-part thing. The town manager has to approve as for character, but that's now been delegated to the director of planning, and then the commission has to determine whether the location for the masseuse is appropriate.
When you said you had others, and I hadn't heard that we had others. But, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
they are regulated by the state of
Oh, I
Connecticut.
know that. You're
So it's not, and the word masseuse is a misnomer. It is massage therapist. These people are educated and
Yeah.
so,
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say
I'm not
anything
saying
different. I'm
that.
just saying it's a
Interview
funky
others, and I hadn't
regulation.
but
heard any,
it's
that's
something
all.
that I think we should be looking at. It's pretty outdated because I'm sure it was written back in the whatever. I mean,
if somebody a good character.
yeah, how do you know?
How do you really examine that? I mean,
That's kind of,
That's-
Well,
yeah.
if they're licensed by the
Nobody
state
will
and they have,
repute, you know.
They're licensed by the state. We require them to submit their driver's license and their fingerprints. And then this ordinance also says they must have an interview to determine character.
and I would think if they had a degree from a school.
Yeah,
the
and you're
teacher
getting
would be-
licensed
right.
by the Department of Health.
No.
It's not like you're just setting up shop and.
No, right,
But if there's an ordinance review committee of the town council that would want to take a look at that, that would be fine with me.
Then this is a town ordinance that you're quoting from.
Right, it's a town ordinance
Okay.
that you have to get a permit from the town manager. So we have the zoning thing, which says,
Okay.
as a personal services, this location is fine. And then you have so the way that this has been tracked in the office is with an MTA number, massage therapy.
Well, I have a question then, and because you have that place in the mall, and I don't even know if those people have a license by the state, and they'd have to have individual license. There's not a
Didn't even know there's one in.
establishment license, each person, and you've got a whole
Right,
slew of them.
and I think the reason why that this one is before the commission is because this is a new location for that type of service, whereas the ones we've had before, there was already massage therapists in there.
In the mall?
No, in wherever the
I'm just
location was. When the
saying
commission, the chairman says he didn't know we've had 5 or
I
6.
don't remember, no.
In the last year, because they were already in an established place that you had approved for that use, but then we had to give the permit to the individual person.
Oh, so you're giving individual permits to each person that
Each
wants
person
to
has to have
practice
have
in
the
this
permit.
town. So.
But I think on this
okay.
one, you've got the permit of the individual, but then this is a new location for that service.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
All right.
So,
Got it.
so really, this won't be, it's an MTA maybe for you, but for us, it's an SPR.
Yes.
Okay. SPR 1712, new restaurant. But we got time for this on the next agenda? Well, we just,
Restaurant.
Well, you can put them on the agenda and you have an 11 o'clock rule, and if you get till 11 o'clock and it has to be
well,
continued.
we've got the daycare,
You got Olive Garden,
and you got Olive Garden.
and you've
just
got
Mr.
the other one,
The,
Party City.
oh, okay, so we're pretty well loaded. Well, we can do the restaurant. Really, that's been a restaurant before, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem unless there
Where is
is
that
now.
restaurant?
You also have a
Street where it's
a
on.
gentleman who went to the Wetlands Commission for a barn on.
Mexican restaurant?
I'm sorry?
You also have your regulations require that if you have an accessory building that's over so many square feet or over 12 feet high, is more than 600 square feet, it has to come here as a special permit. So we have a gentleman who went to the Wetlands Commission and got a permit to erect a barn, but your regulations say that because of that size of that barn and the height of the barn, it has to come here for a special permit. So we would like to put that on for the next meeting as well.
Okay.
And then you have
2862, how's that coming? This says a new business. Is this a new one coming in, or what? Is this an existing one that's moving?
which one are you on, sir?
2862.
Oh, Potter Hollow wants to convert their approval in Hazardville to instead of beer, they want to only do wine there, but they also want to extend it to having outdoor events and wine sipping and so forth in the grass area. So that's one thing, and then the second application is to move their beer manufacturing location to, I believe it's Post Road.
That's what it says.
Post Road. And it's part of that Post Road building. That's a building with other uses in it. So that we looked up in the regulations. We could not find where a brewery is mentioned. And when the brewery was approved in Pond Hollow, it was approved as manufacturing, the manufacture of beer.
Right.
So if you're comfortable with that, then that would be the same approach to...
We'll follow the same thing, and then let's write up one for breweries. It seems, I read in the paper that they continue to blossom in different
Right.
towns, and
We should really add breweries to the
So,
list of allowed uses and decide where and under what conditions.
And where
Jen-
does this place want to move to?
On Post Road, right around the corner from where the guy's been trying to put the pool place in.
oh, okay.
At least it's not on mine.
Well,
I don't even know.
all
I
right,
live
well,
around the corner,
then,
but I don't know.
let Jen can work on the zone, writing up the zone for that.
Well, no, I mean, this one can go through on the
Okay.
same
No,
notion.
I'm just, help us out on what we've got, because both of these are going to be, one's a public hearing. They're
Well,
both
one's a public hearing because it's the outdoor dining.
Yeah. Well, we can take them both together, but on the same night to save time for the individuals, but how much have we got? We can't stick them in with the next meeting.
I'm looking at a different piece of paper than you are, so I thought I should get the same piece of paper.
No, I'm just looking at tonight's agenda for the additional applications to receive, but I don't have what's on next week's agenda. I know we've added some, we've got backed up.
Right, and the only reason we're putting them on the agenda now is an application to be received so that you got a heads up that they're in the door.
Right.
And you can start thinking about them, and we will
time to go out and look
we
at
will
them.
put a proposed agenda together and then distribute it for you to say yay or nay to.
Okay, well, the 2862 and 2863, it's a local business, and the guy apparently is expanding. Let's get him on as soon as, do you know how soon he's ready to go?
The applications are in and filed. We haven't reviewed them, but they look substantial.
Well, put him on, and as soon as you think it's ready to go,
And there's another one. We had two ART meetings this week, and one was for the 38 lots at Shaker Heights.
right.
And that application should be coming in, but we don't have it yet, so I don't see how it could go on the 18th.
You got, well, okay, then the rest of these, I'll leave it up to you, and when you call me, because we've got all these backed up that we've already put on.
Right. And then you have the New Day Church that wants to go into NAMCO. We had an ART on that this week. That's not going to be ready for the next meeting because they have a lot of things that they need to work on after the ART.
I hope this new deal with Secretary works out, because it sounds to me like it's going to back up even worse. Because
Well, we're doing the best we can, sir.
I know the Pride Station's not going to, well, you may have a discussion, but it's not in a public hearing. It's not going to be going for an hour or so, but some of these others may.
But that concern should take about 5 minutes.
Well,
And in the wings is the application for the Phase 3 of 25 Bacon Road is coming through.
okay.
So, I mean, the good news is, and that there is one more that I should mention. This commission approved several years ago an industrial park called Metro Park down by South Road.
Yes.
And that has been sold. There is a new owner who is coming in to pursue development there as well. We don't have even a preliminary application yet, but that's coming.
Would you be so kind as to give him the, if he's interested, is give him the information that was obtained prior, because there's a lot of difficulties with producing that. I mean, because they're,
Firing on you, Charlie, watch it.
I saw. Okay. There's, give him some of the information, or if he wants to, if he has it, because there's a lot of background. There's been several proposals for that area. Ray, I think it was when Ray was here, they'd gone to the state for funding for that area for an industrial park.
And finally, because I'm getting this sign from
Yeah, I
some of
got
the
it,
members.
too.
But there was also a proposal for the corner right out here on what you called Core Area B in our workshop the other night, which is the empty Broyhill building. There is a proposal that would tear down both of those buildings and have a new building on that corner.
Which building? Now, he's talking about,
Broyhill, right on the corner out here.
but, well, it would be a public hearing anyhow.
Yeah.
No, because one of them's okay. Yeah, all right. I guess,
I think we're done. We can go home, Mr. Chairman.
well, that's if there are no, no?
Make a
You don't
motion.
have any conditions there?
Not unless someone else does.
Okay. All set?
Go.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel matters.
Well, you'd have to make a motion first to adjourn the agenda. No, I can't. No, you can't. That's what I said. You have to make a motion to amend the agenda
No,
by
I-
adding that.
Yeah, you got to amend the agenda to add it on.
Make a motion to amend the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add executive session.
Right.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? It's unanimous. Now, the motion to, sorry?
Got to go to a different room.
Yeah, we'll make a motion to.
Yeah, I'd like
go
to make a
into
motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel matters.
And what?
Second, okay. All in favor? Okay, we are in an executive session. You said the Thompsonville room? Or